All right, folks, it's the Monday edition of the Steve Malzberg Show. We're kicking it off in style with John Fund, Newsmax contributor, national affairs correspondent for National Review Online. Eric Holder has had some things to say, and of course, who better to talk about that than the co-author of the new book, Obama's Enforcer. Then the Malzberg panel, columnist for Breitbart.com and American thinker C. Edmund Wright, and economist and professor at University of Maryland, Peter Marisi, will be here. Brian Zimmer joins us. He is so familiar with the border, the border legislation that was written and passed by the House so many years ago. He was the head investigator for the House Judiciary Committee, so he could explain to us once and for all how big the fence should be at this point, why it's not that big, what it'll take to make it that big. We'll ask him all those great questions. All that, give me five, and more on this hour of the Steve Malzberg Show.
Ready? Fire away. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City. A fusion of politics, commentary, entertainment, and sports. Steve and his team bring you the latest news and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
Well, you know, there's a certain level of vehemence, it seems to me, that's directed at me, directed at the president. You know, people talk about taking their country back. You know, I can't look into people's hearts, look into people's minds, but it seems to me that this president has been treated differently than others. There's a certain racial component to this for some people. I don't think this is the thing, is a main driver, but for some, there's a racial animus.
All right, folks, that's just some of what Eric Holder, our fine Attorney General, had to say in an interview. He also made some remarks about Sarah Palin and the Washington Redskins. Here to talk about all of that is Newsmax contributor, national affairs correspondent for National Review Online, and the author of the great new book, Obama's Enforcer, Eric Holder's Justice Department. We'll put it up on the screen. There you go. John, welcome. Always great to see you, sir. Thanks for coming in. It's no surprise. I mean, he's been down this road before, correct?
Well, the first few months he was in office, he said we were a nation of racial cowards. Eric Holder has an interesting view of history that's about 50 years old. When people say we want to take the country back, that's what Democrats and Republicans always say during campaigns. If he wants to think that that has some kind of racial component to it, it's bizarre. Actually, if you look at Eric Holder's record, he has polarized, politicized, and racialized the Justice Department more than any other Attorney General. Give you an example, the new Black Panther case. This was a case in which Black Panthers wearing military-style uniforms and carrying, side weapons were intimidating voters at a Philadelphia polling place. Bartle Bull, who formerly published the Village Voice, said it was the most obvious and ridiculous violation of civil rights he'd seen since Mississippi in the 1960s.
And he was down there.
And he was down there. So the Bush Justice Department, in its final days, prosecuted. Black Panthers didn't show up in court. We now know that perhaps they knew the fix was in because Eric Holder basically dismissed the case with almost no sanctions whatsoever. So that was a case in which clearly, if whites had been doing it, something very serious would have happened to them. Versus New Black Panthers, not so much.
It's almost surreal. I mean, you think back, it wasn't that long ago when that story broke, when this story happened. I remember the Fox News reporter, whose name escapes me at the moment, talking to these guys and everything. And you're right, the Bush Justice Department instituted the proceedings, and then Obama comes in, and it all went bye-bye. And here's something else. I mean, it was the New Black Panther Party, or whoever it was, but I don't remember, but that took out a bounty on George Zimmerman. A bounty on a guy who had not been charged or arrested or was not wanted by the police.
And who sent representatives down to Florida to attend the rallies organizing the protests against George Zimmerman. And now they're going after some float in Nebraska because it supposedly insulted the president.
Yes.
Look, Eric Holder also in this interview said, well, voter ID laws discriminate against minorities. Well, all the polls show overwhelming majorities of minorities support voter ID laws. Frankly, as Andrew Young, the former mayor of Atlanta and a civil rights leader, said, we're doing people a favor if we get them an ID because they can then enter the mainstream of American life. Eric Holder is suing, despite a Supreme Court decision saying states should not have to ask permission to change their election laws. He's suing North Carolina. He's suing Texas. Well, we have evidence now from Georgia and Indiana and other states that have used voter ID for almost a decade, that it doesn't lower turnout. In fact, minority turnout has gone up in those states, and not just in presidential years. In South Carolina, the Justice Department's case was so weak, not only did the judge throw it out and agree to the state's voter ID law, but he ordered sanctions, fines against the Justice Department for pursuing what was basically a frivolous case.
You know, look at Mississippi, and you tell me, I'll ask you because you've written the books on these issues as well, specific to voting regulations and abuses. You know, there's this question of whether or not the runoff results will stand, because some of the Democrats who voted in the runoff may have voted in the Democratic primary.
Well,
but if you had voter ID, it would have been much easier,
exactly.
right?
Look, we have many complaints out of Mississippi. But Mississippi actually had instituted its voter ID law this election. Now, the sound you hear, which is crickets chirping, is all the complaints that came out because people had to show ID.
Right.
Now, obviously, the poll workers weren't skilled enough to go back and look at the history of that voter, which would have taken time and all of that. So there may be problems with that election, but it wasn't problems in asking people to show an ID.
Again, for a Justice Department, and your book it just documents all of these cases, and I mean, we've had people, career Justice Department officials, you know, J. Christian Adams for one, he was a whistleblower, so to speak. He left, he blew the whistle that this Justice Department is not interested. I mean, here he talks about the animus, the racial animus that directed towards him and Obama. He's been held in contempt of Congress. He hints it's because he's black. Yet you have a Justice Department that, according to some who were in it, have no interest in prosecuting violations of the law when it's whites against when it's blacks against whites, as evidenced by the Black Panther case.
It's not just J. Christian Adams. The Inspector General of the Justice Department found that in the Civil Rights Division, conservatives and non-liberals were harassed, hazed, called names. Email campaigns were launched against them. We actually know
within the Justice Department.
Within the Justice Department. We actually know some of the Justice Department personnel who did this behavior. And in fact, at least one was caught and found to have lied to fellow investigators, which is a very serious crime. That person is still working at the Justice Department, and there's no evidence that any punishment whatsoever was ever given to her.
They didn't get a raise?
Well, I don't know about that, but we certainly know they didn't pay a price.
I'd like to say that's shocking, but it's not shocking.
So if you want to talk about raising the temperature, polarizing people, dividing us, this Attorney General is working for the divider-in-chief. Absolutely.
Let's talk about the IRS a little bit here. The Justice Department certainly could bring charges against Lois Lerner. They could prosecute her, whatever.
There's an investigation, I hear, that's been going on for 14 months.
And isn't it by a woman who was a big contributor to the Obama campaign?
Was a contributor to the Obama campaign, not just in the general election, but actually in the primaries when he was an underdog against Hillary. So she's a longstanding Obama supporter. I know about 22 principals in the IRS scandal. As far as I can tell, 19 or 20 of them have heard nothing from the Justice Department after 14 months. This investigation may finally get underway in January 2017, when Barack Obama leaves office.
Yeah, with the new Justice Department
but
head.
Two federal judges last week called out the Justice Department and basically said, you're not doing your job.
So I'll do it.
We'll do it. Or we'll appoint people who will make you do it.
They demanded the IRS show
Which is
records.
more than the Justice Department ever did. The Justice Department often, when it raids companies and suspect of a crime, they will seize the computers. They'll seize the hard drives. They'll seize the records. There's no evidence that the Justice Department has asked the IRS for anything or to secure those records. Far from securing those records, they've apparently allowed a bunch of emails to go missing. You know, the dog ate my emails.
It is incredible. Okay, the Attorney General also weighed in. You know, Sarah Palin said it's time to impeach the president. He said that he and Sarah Palin was a bad vice presidential candidate, and she's even a worse judge on impeachment. But he also said this. Let's go to 67 about the Redskins.
I think the name ought to be changed. I think it is an offensive name. And the Redskins are, that organization is a great one. It's a team with a storied history that has huge amounts of support in Washington, D.C. And I think in the 21st century, they could increase their fan base, increase their level of support if they did something that is, from my perspective, so obviously right.
Steve,
the Redskins need fans, by the way.
This is the 21st century, I agree. We have modern scientific public opinion polling. American Indians, Native Americans have been asked about this. Big yawn. Many of them say, you know, we don't normally name teams after things you don't like. I mean, you name teams after things that have some kind of positive image. And otherwise, why would you name the team that way?
Absolutely.
So we not only have polls showing that Native Americans don't mind this by overwhelming majorities, but the Patent and Trademark Office that took away the rights of the Redskins to their name did not have a single, not one, public complaint against the use of the term Redskins. So the Justice Department is saying this is an offensive term. Other than the left-wing agitators who are offended by everything, please give me the evidence where the offense is.
Well, what could he do to intimidate and make the life of the owner of the Redskins or the NFL miserable, in much the same way that you just alluded to earlier, that despite the Supreme Court decision, he's now suing to reinstate or to uphold parts of the Voting Rights Act that were struck down by the Supreme Court. How could he do that?
I think this just these public comments are a disparagement of reputation. I mean, when the top law enforcement official in the country says you're engaged in offensive behavior, and many of the people who watch your television and aren't aware of this issue on a daily basis hear this, they say, gee, Redskins bad. I don't know exactly why, but they're bad.
Yeah.
You know, disparagement of reputation can cost people a lot of business.
Yeah, well, I wonder if he could be sued for that. One more.
No, sovereign immunity.
That's true.
By the way, the reason Eric Holder will remain Attorney General throughout Obama's second term is if he were to quit, he would have a new occupation, Steve, permanent witness.
That's probably very true. Okay, one more. I mentioned the Zimmerman trial earlier. I realized yesterday or the other day, because they had Rachel Jeantel on CNN. God help us, I don't know why, but I have a Gimme 5 on that coming up later. That investigation against Zimmerman is still ongoing by the Justice Department.
You know, they must really have a slow-walking team over there. I mean, I know that maybe their computers aren't completely up to date, and maybe they have the IRS email system. I don't know, but things happen awfully slowly. But all of this is in my book, Obama's Enforcer.
Absolutely.
The Eric Holder Justice Department, which I co-authored with Hans von Spackowski.
Great to see you, John. Thank you so much. Appreciate it always. All right, folks, there it is. Obama's Enforcer up on the screen. Get it and just learn just how insane this whole situation is. All right, when we come back, it's time for the Malzberg panel. We're going to discuss all of Eric Holder's remarks, and we'll take a look at the latest on the immigration front and the war between Israel and Hamas and what was said about it over the weekend by both sides. When we return, only here on the Steve Malzberg Show and only on Newsmax Television. Don't go away.
Any flashlight can throw a beam, but not even this floodlight is bright enough to light up a room. Now there's the Torchlight from Bell & Howell, the high-tech portable light that's really big on brightness. Look, ordinary flashlights just have a narrow beam, but the Torchlight has a brighter, wider beam that brilliantly lights up the entire room. Even when the power goes out, you won't be left in the dark because its 28 ultra-bright LEDs give you over 100,000 hours of bright, reliable light. It's like having nature's own sunlight at your fingertips. Its high-powered magnetic base lets you securely attach it to any metal surface to give you a steady, bright light that brilliantly lights up your entire work area. It's like having an extra pair of hands. It's so powerful it can lift up to 2.5 pounds. And with its bright light, there's no easier way to quickly pick up dropped nails and screws. And look, the Torchlight is also a flashlight. Its 5 white LEDs give you a clear, bright light to easily see wherever you go. The sturdy base keeps the Torchlight in place exactly where you want it, and the articulating arm has 6 preset positions that let you tilt the light an incredible 180 degrees to give you total lighting coverage. Use it at your computer, as a table lamp, or to light up those dark, unlit areas. Better yet, with the built-in hook, you can hang it anywhere and rotate it 360 degrees to give you light wherever you need it, while its rugged construction makes it impact-resistant and weatherproof too. And now the Bell & Howell Torchlight is yours for just $10. But wait, call now and we'll double your order. That's 2 for the price of 1. Just pay separate processing and handling. Order your Torchlight now.
To order your torchlight and receive a second one free, have your credit card ready and call toll-free 1-800-936-0400. That's 1-800-936-0400.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.
Politics, commentary, entertainment, sports, news and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
It's interesting to me that for whatever reason, Republicans decided early on that this was a president they were just simply not going to cooperate with. And over the past 5.5 years, we have seen demonstrations of that, where the president has reached out his hand, offered compromises that have simply not been met as they have been in the past by a Republican Party willing to do the appropriate things. And when I say the Republican Party, I'd say a faction of the Republican Party, and I'd even go further than that. I'd say a faction of the House Republican caucus that has simply said we're not going to cooperate with the president.
All right, let me get this straight. The president has reached out his hand across the aisle, willing to cooperate with the Republicans, and they've said no? And of course, the insinuation is that's because he's black, if you take it with the other remarks he made, where he sees racial animus in the opposition to both himself and to the president. We're back. The Malzberg panel is here while we try to hook up our friend C. Edmund Wright from Breitbart.com, an American thinker. We are joined by, it's been a while, Peter Morici, of course, Newsmax contributor, economist, and professor at the University of Maryland. And let me ask you, Peter, the Attorney General at it again, talking about the racial aspect of Republican opposition to both himself and the president.
Well, let's look at what he just said. He said he reached out across the aisle. When Barack Obama took office, they were in the rare situation of having 60 votes in the Senate. And as a consequence, they chose to draft the health care legislation without Republican participation, and ultimately, because of that support. If you exclude people from a major piece of social legislation, the first time in American history, from any participation, they're not going to cooperate with you. Racism? Do you remember the concept of bleaching, when they would try to move black people from a neighborhood and create a white space back in the 50s and 60s when we had de facto segregation in the North? Consider what Mr. Obama is doing with immigration and how focused his political activities are in places like Texas to cultivate Hispanic votes. It seems to me that the president has decided, because they don't vote for Democrats, there are too many white voters in America, and his immigration policy is to change that and to flip Texas in the process. I think that there is an undercurrent of racism in the dialogue and tension between Republicans and Democrats. And I believe Eric Holder, well, let me just put it to you this way. Psychologists have a phrase. It's called projection. You know, you complain most about the bad trait in someone else when it is manifested mostly in you, particularly in yourself. You know, Peter's a hothead, so I say Steve's a hothead. Well, that's Eric Holder and Barack Obama.
All right, Edmund, I know you just came a little late. We did, the immigration part of that answer was based on, started with Eric Holder's claim that there's racial animus in the opposition to both himself and the president, which he stated again over the weekend.
Well, you know, this is just, Steve, this is really funny. Didn't we have a population in 2008 and 2012 that had no problem voting for Barack Obama, who I believe at last report is the same race today that he was in both the November of 08 and 012. This and the war on women's really all they have is the race card and the war on women card. So Eric Holder is one of the chief ways the Obama administration injects race into every single issue.
Let me take it to immigration, Edmund, as Peter brought up, and I'm glad he did. We now have reports of small, lifeless, dead children found washed up along a riverbank of the Rio Grande. You have the president now talking to the governors And I mean, this is the revelation is of the master plan. We're going to fly these kids to every state in the union. They'll never leave. How are we ever going to keep track of them? And by the way, who knows what diseases they might have? I can't even believe what I'm seeing and hearing.
Well, you know, over the weekend, Steve, I was trying to figure out if this was a plot by Obama to bring in more Democrat voters, or a plot by ESPN to bring in more soccer fans. But, you know, America is changing, and this is an attempt to make it change really, really badly, really, really quickly. This is all coordinated. It's been coordinated since 2010 or 2011, I believe, when they started reaching out to Baptist and Catholic churches to be part of the freedom train for these people.
Peter?
Oh, I agree completely. Barack Obama campaigned on the notion of changing America. That was code for make it less white.
Yep.
There is a racial problem in Washington, and there are racists in our government. But they are particularly concentrated right now in the executive branch and in the Oval Office. Mr. Obama is so scarred by the past of black people in America that he cannot give us one America through his election. We should have black presidents, but we need black presidents who want to be president of the entire country and don't have animus, absolute animus, dislike, view as the enemy, and want to destroy people who disagree with him. And that's what we have here. You know, the president's idea of compromising is you meet him halfway and then he persuades you to come the rest of the way, or we don't have a vote. And he takes every available opportunity that he has to try to pin a problem on, oh, the Republicans don't want to do anything. Yes, they don't want to give him the ability to import as many Hispanic voters as suits his purpose without knowledge that he's going to do something about the border. I mean, essentially, what Mr. Obama wants to do is to naturalize Hispanics as quickly as possible to get them voting for Democrats. This is a race situation. Mr. Holder is right, but they're basically throwing these charges around and leaving folks like us with not much voice as a way of putting us on the defensive. I've had enough. For example, my university specifically has programs in place to advantage the advancement of women into administration. Okay, there aren't enough women administrators, except for the fact that an Asian American is president and a woman is provost. But, you know, my university gives more degrees to women than men. So I think we should have programs to ensure that half the degrees are given to men. Now, no one's in favor of that, but nationwide, American universities give 60% of their diplomas to women. Now, if there was ever gender bias, using the matrix and the yardsticks that the EEOC uses, that's one, and that's a very significant thing. I mean, suppose that in a town with people that had the same socioeconomic characteristics, 40% of the blacks went on to college and graduated, and 60% of the whites with the same economic statistics. We'd say something's wrong. Well, there's surely something wrong.
All right, Peter, stay where you are. Guys, stay where you are. We're coming back, and we'll talk about the Middle East and Sergeant Bergdahl returning to duty. Yes, I said returning to duty. Coming up on part 2 of the Malzberg panel. Don't go away.
I've got a small business, and everybody said you should be promoting it with Facebook.
Well, I use Facebook for myself, but I had no idea how to use it for my plumbing business.
Then I heard about web.com.
They told me they would build a professional Facebook page for my business free.
So I gave them a call.
And then they built me a Facebook page for free. I couldn't believe it.
If you call web.com now, you can have a new Facebook page built for your small business free. We even write posts for your Facebook page that will get people talking about you.
It's like I have this whole big social media department for my business.
Call now and web.com will build your new Facebook page free. Then we'll continue to bring you new fans, write posts for you, and report on results, all for one low monthly fee. If not, cancel and pay nothing.
Now people call me and say, I found you on Facebook. How cool is that?
You say it, we build it free.
Call 1-855-235-7998 today. Meet Mary. She loves to shop online with her debit card. And so does Bill, an identity thief who stole Mary's identity, took over her bank accounts, and stole her hard-earned money. Unfortunately, millions of Americans just like you learn all it may take is a little misplaced information to wreak havoc on your life. This is identity theft, and no one helps stop it better than LifeLock. LifeLock offers the most comprehensive identity theft protection available. If Mary had LifeLock's bank account alerts, she may have been notified before it was too late. LifeLock's credit notification service is on the job 24/7. As soon as they detect a threat to your identity within their network, they will alert you, protecting you before the damage is done. LifeLock has the most comprehensive identity theft protection available, guarding your social security number, your money, your credit, even the equity in your home.
My years as a prosecutor taught me that we all need to protect ourselves from crime. In today's world, that includes identity theft. It's a serious problem. We all have to protect ourselves.
While identity theft can't be completely stopped, no one works harder to protect you than LifeLock. You even get a $1 million service guarantee. That's security no one can beat. You have so much to protect and nothing to lose. When you call LifeLock right now and get 60 days of identity theft protection risk-free. That's right, 60 days risk-free. Use promo code NOTME. Order now and get this document shredder to keep sensitive documents out of the wrong hands. A $29 value, free. Don't wait until you become the next victim. Call 1-800-918-3128 for 60 days of LifeLock identity theft protection risk-free and get a document shredder free. Use promo code NOTME. Call 1-800-918-3128 now.
I'm Miranda Kahn here with your latest Newsmax Now update. Exactly how safe are your mobile devices? A new report by Monday's Pediatrics suggests iPads may be connected to unexplained rashes. Medical journals have linked rashes to nickel allergies found in a variety of electronic devices in the past. Although not life-threatening, some severe cases can require treatment with steroids and antibiotics. Well, for the first time, foreigners, including an American woman, face charges of illegally selling private information in China. Ying Zhengyu and her British husband, Peter Humphrey, worked as investigators for UK drug giant GlaxoSmithKline. They're accused of obtaining information on Chinese citizens by illegally buying it from others, among other things. The couple face trial next month. And that's your Newsmax Now update. Now back to the Steve Malzberg Show.
All right, folks, welcome back. And coming up, by the way, in the next segment, we're going to be joined by Brian Zimmer. He was a former House Judiciary's chief investigator, and he knows inside out the story of the border fence. What border fence? Well, there is some border fence, but how much should there be? How much is there? What was the law as it was written? What does it call for? We're going to get it all from him. I've never really heard this discussed. This man knows everything in that bill. He was there when the law was written and passed, so stay tuned for that. All right, back to the panel. C. Edmund Wright and Peter Marisi. Gentlemen, I don't know how this is possible, and I have no idea what's going on around here, but Sergeant Bergdahl is going back to active duty reportedly today, or as early as today. Apparently his rehab is done. I don't know what about where the investigation stands. I don't know if they've talked to him. Last I heard, the people who served with him had said nobody talked to any of them. How could they put him back with soldiers when most of those who served with him, if not all, say he deserted? Peter? I'm sorry, let me start with Edmund. Go ahead, Edmund. I'm sorry, Edmund, go ahead.
No, I mean, this is very disturbing. I mean, I think it's quite obviously a PR stunt. I can't claim that I'm a military historian to the point that I know exactly what normal protocol is in this situation. But Steve and Dr. Marisi, I'd be shocked if this were anything approaching a normal way to reintegrate someone who had disappeared under these circumstances back into his unit. Esprit de corps and fighting for your buddy is what the U.S. military is based on, and I just don't see how bringing Bergdahl back is consistent with any of that. This cannot end well.
Peter?
Well, absolutely. You know, in these environments, the people in a unit, the platoon or what have you, know that they can absolutely depend on each other, that they have, especially in the United States Army, an absolute commitment. So, you don't leave your wounded comrade in an intersection and run off to save yourself. You go back into that intersection, take the fire, and drag him out. Can you really depend on this person? I don't know what they're thinking at the Pentagon. I don't know what kind of dope they're smoking these days. But whatever brand it is, it should be banned and outlawed. It's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I just couldn't imagine
just
being a soldier and welcoming this man into the unit, at least to be fair to everybody, Edmund, at least until the investigation's complete and some determination has been made.
Well, yeah, right. In addition to that, you know, there needs to be some time that passes for any sort of healing or trust to be built. I mean, there's no way that this is okay with his comrades now. I mean, it's human nature. It's obvious.
All right, guys, listen, I appreciate you sticking around for segments 1 and 2 of the Malzberg panel. We'll speak to you both soon. Thank you. See Edmund Wright and Peter Marisi. And I get that must be. I was shocked when I heard this. I mean, I didn't expect it to be coming, and I guess that's that's my bad. But I just don't know how this man could go back to fighting for his country when all these questions surround his disappearance and his actions and his love of country with the emails he supposedly wrote. Anyway, okay, are we back? Yeah, no, okay. So stick with us, because when we come back, as I said, it's going to be all about the border's fence. In the meantime, though, it's time for this hour's America's Moment, and we take a look back at the miracle on ice. Don't miss it.
History calls it a miracle. The 1980 13th Winter Olympic Games were in full force in Lake Placid, New York. Months earlier, the Soviet troops had invaded Afghanistan, and President Jimmy Carter was threatening to boycott the Summer Olympic Games scheduled to be played in Moscow. But all U.S. Olympic hockey team coach Herb Brooks was thinking about was winning games. His team was the youngest hockey team to ever compete in the Olympics. In spite of their age and inexperience, only 2 teams stood between them and Olympic gold. The first was the mighty Soviets, whose team consisted of seasoned world-class players who just a year earlier had soundly defeated the National Hockey League's All-Star team. The last time the Soviets had played these Americans in an exhibition game, the Soviets dominated 10-3. Sports commentators openly remarked that the only thing that could keep the Soviets from winning the gold would be if the ice melted. But the Americans, led by their captain Mike Eruzione, had other ideas. As the game got underway, the Soviets quickly scored, and by the end of the second period, led 3-2. A little after 8 minutes into the third period, Mark Johnson's goal tied the game. And then with just 10 minutes left to play, Mike Eruzione fired a shot past his defender to give the Americans the lead. The last seconds of the game tell it all.
Is there. The puck is still loose. 11 seconds. You've got 10 seconds. The countdown going on right now. Morrow up to Silk. 5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
For Newsmax TV, I'm Bill Curtis, and this is an American Moment.
When Bob got into the accident, I was terrified. His injuries were so severe, but once we knew he was going to be okay, what then?
I couldn't go back to work for a long time, and we got way behind on our bills.
We'd hired an attorney, but when our case kept dragging on, we didn't know how we were going to get by. Thankfully, our attorney knew about Oasis Legal Finance.
Oasis looked at our case and got us the money the very next day.
What a relief it was. We didn't have to wait until our case settled, and the money from Oasis helped us when we needed it most.
At first, I wasn't so sure. What if we lost the case? How would we be able to pay back Oasis? But then I found out if we did lose, we wouldn't have to pay them back, so there was no risk in doing it. No risk.
If you were involved in an accident and hired an attorney to fight for the compensation you deserve but need money now before your case settles, then call Oasis today. Oasis has given millions of dollars to people like you who need money fast while waiting for their case to settle. There's no risk, so call now.
I was hurt badly in a car accident just after my wife gave birth. We were counting on the cash from my lawsuit to get caught up, but the case took forever.
Honestly, we didn't know what we were going to do. Then we saw an Oasis TV commercial and called.
We were approved and got money from Oasis the next day.
Not in a week, the very next day.
I was hurt at work and filed a workers' comp claim. I called Oasis and they gave me the cash I needed. Unfortunately, I ended up losing my case, but Oasis let us keep the money. They kept their promise, and we didn't need to pay them back.
There are no out-of-pocket costs and no payments until your case is settled. If you lose your case, you don't have to repay Oasis. There's no risk. Call Oasis now to see how much money you can get before your case settles.
Call now, 1-800-562-8184. 1-800-562-8184. 1-800-562-8184.
Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
Jay Johnson has now visited, at my direction, the border 5 times. He's going for a 6th this week. He then comes back and reports to me extensively on everything that's taking place. So there's nothing that is taking place down there that I am not intimately aware of and briefed on. This isn't theater. This is a problem. I'm not interested in photo ops. I'm interested in solving a problem.
All right, folks, the now infamous statement, the president's not going to the border, he's not interested in photo ops, he's interested in solving the problem. Joining us now, once again, I'm very happy to say, is president of the Coalition for a Secure Driver's License and former senior policy advisor and investigator for the House Judiciary Committee, Brian Zimmer. Great to see you again, sir.
Great to be here,
Thanks for coming back. Okay, let's talk about this question that I've always had and people seem to ask from time to time. Can we secure the border? Didn't we start building a fence? Did we ever finish the fence? I know that answer is no. Why did we not finish the fence? Can we finish the fence? Now, you are intimately familiar with the legislation that was written to build a border fence from your time at the House Judiciary Committee.
Correct.
Explain this to me and try to answer all those seemingly simple yet probably complicated questions.
Well, first of all, the idea of fencing the border is a very new idea historically for Americans. We've had relatively open borders with our 2 neighboring countries for more than 100 years. The fence on the Canadian border was there actually was a coast-to-coast fence there, except for a few areas of mountains that was taken down during the Carter years. There have been many business and political reasons not to build fences on our borders. So when Representative Duncan Hunter first proposed a fence, substantive fence for this California border, it was met with a great deal of opposition, ridicule, etc. So fortunately, an earlier bill passed in 2005, the Real ID Act, created the option for the Secretary of Homeland Security to override environmental and lawsuit type oppositions. Although it didn't prescribe a fence, it simply said if the Secretary needs to build a fence, where he needs to build it or she needs to build it, they have the legal authority. And it limits judicial review to the courts of the District of Columbia, so you can't have just all sorts of wildcat lawsuits. Although they continue to come up and then they're dismissed. But in 2006, the Secure Fence Act of 2006, also initiative of Representative Hunter from San Diego area of California, was overwhelmingly supported because in the meantime the American public had decided a fence was necessary. However, in a way the fence bill was less than the American public thought it was, because they saw the name, they didn't realize it was only a partial fence. It's about not quite 2,000 miles of border from the Gulf to the California coast.
And how long was the fence?
The fence was less than 700 miles.
Okay, so less than 700 out of 2,000 miles.
Was what was actually, and the Fence Act, if anyone wants to Google it up, actually prescribes where the fence will be built. And that was because people wanted fences in Arizona, New Mexico, and California. The public supported them. There was much less support in Texas, and there's still a lot of opposition in Texas, potentially from the governor.
Really? Why would that be?
It's a cultural concept. Texas has a very large number of people of Mexican extraction. They may have been in Texas for 5 generations, but they've gone back and forth across the border comfortably, just driving across. And so the governors of Texas responding to the public, to that portion of the public, didn't see it that way. Also, Texas is flat, except for some mountainous regions in the southernmost part of Texas. It's got the, it's mostly defined by the Rio Grande River Valley. And so that's been flat, open, pastoral country with people moving back and forth. And in general, those prior to building the fences, there was not that much illegal traffic through Texas on a, in terms of, and now people from Central America.
I wonder where Governor Perry would fit now, or would weigh in now on that issue.
Well, we'd have to ask him. But
Now, so how much of, as we sit here now, approximately how much of the 700 miles that was accounted for in the bill has been built?
About 690 miles, but the fence bill didn't specify what kind of fence should be built. So most of it is single strand. The Border Patrol then, in their informal advisories to Congress, advised us we'd be much better off building a double strand with a road in between, which is what exists at San Diego.
I would assume
and
that would
also
make sense,
at El Paso, yes. But there was such an urgency to build a fence to please the American public, and especially the residents of Arizona, New Mexico, and California, that this was put up in considerable haste. However, it is very, very substantial single-strand fence. It's buried the posts are buried 6 feet in the ground, and there's 3 feet of concrete under most of it.
Pretty secure, yeah.
So it's very hard to, you have to go down a long way to tunnel under this. And generally the only tunneling that's occurred has been near urban areas for the purposes of drug smuggling, not human smuggling.
Right. So, I mean, do you believe that there's a need for, or that there would be popular support for someone else, maybe a Duncan Hunter or someone else introducing more fence, maybe another, I don't know, from 700 to 2,000, the other 1,300, or maybe half that or something?
Well, one of the unusual advocates for a fence is Senator Schumer from your own state, who is part of the author of the Senate immigration bill.
Don't ever put Charles Schumer on me in any way, shape, or form. I have nothing to do with him. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
I'm just saying he is one of the people that added another 700 miles of fence in the Senate bill, and that's really a high-quality fence.
That's in the Senate bill that passed the Senate?
That's correct. In obscure, it was added and then further improved when they were trying to get additional Republican support. But there definitely were Democratic senators who do understand that there is going to be continued pressure. One of the things that I want to share with you and with the public is there are about 7 billion people out there on the planet. A large percentage of them would like to come to the United States. Okay, if you have public figures in the United States talking about amnesty, massive amnesty, whether it's Senator Schumer or the president or McCain from Arizona, it's a big green sign out there. And while the message in our country may be somewhat nuanced, when it gets overseas, a couple thousand miles away, it's like a telephone exchange. Exactly so. When you repeat these things, it gets like, let's all go to America. The President Obama is going to give us all. So even though he's publicly, putting out an advertising campaign now, it's going to be hard to straighten out that message, because for 6 years there have been a lot of people saying that very prominently. So it's going to attract not only people from Central America, but from all over the world. Now, imagine all the Syrian refugees and the Iraqi refugees that are fleeing that chaotic environment.
Yeah, if they're making excuses, when I say they, the left, the Democrats, the president, that these kids are persecuted or escaping gangs, you're right. The Syrian refugees, there'll be other refugees. I mean, from the Gaza Strip. I mean, all would be welcome, and it would be crazy. Let me ask you one other question about the fence. How effective is it where it is? In other words, if it were to be built...
It's very effective. That's really why right now, first of all, there are about 750,000 people that are in some way impeded every year on the Mexican border. Okay, our apprehension rates are about 350,000. The GAO, the Government Accountability Office, an authoritative source, recently said they estimated that fewer than 60% of the people who attempt to come in are being interdicted. So that means that although they're stopping 350,000, at least another 350,000 are getting through. Now, those are probably not the kids.
Yeah, no, sure.
They're going to be grown up, and they're again, Government Accountability Office estimates that 90% of those who make it through are trafficked.
Yeah.
Now they're trafficked because they paid somebody.
Right, right.
Okay.
Like,
so
yeah, a lot of the kids, that's what's happening with them.
well,
now, yeah.
but the higher value trafficking is 30,000. Now, let me ask you a question, Steve. Do you really think somebody from Central America can afford $30,000 to get trafficked through?
You would think not.
You would be correct.
Yeah.
So the higher value trafficking are people who can afford it and who have probably other agendas, been getting a day job as a gardener.
We got a minute. So
Yeah,
let
sure.
me ask you this unfair question in a minute. What's the answer?
More fence. More fence. And
National Guard, too?
Not yet. I think we'll have to reassess how many Border Patrol we need, but this is going to be kind of a permanent problem for the United States. We're a very rich nation, and there are a lot of poor nations with worldwide television, and people saying, come on in. People are going to be coming.
They're going to be coming. It's a very serious situation, not to mention the health concerns and every other concern. And now, of course, the president asking the governors to accept these kids all over the country when we don't even know what shots they've had or what disease they might have or be carrying or whatever. Always great to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much. Great to see you, and your expertise is unmatched. Stay where you are. Folks, that's Brian Zimmer, president of the Coalition for a Secure Driver's License. Don't forget about that. And former senior policy advisor and chief investigator for the House Judiciary Committee. You know, the president's coming under more and more scrutiny every day for not going down to the border. And we know why. He doesn't want photo ops. He misspoke. He doesn't want that photo op. He doesn't want to be photographed with those kids in cages. That's what he doesn't want. Make no mistake about that. Okay, folks, we're coming back with another Gimme 5. And you're not going to want to miss this. It's the Palestinian side of the war with Israel. Don't go away.
Pat Boone here with a word about bank safety. Do you think your money is safe in the bank? Don't bank on it. A generation ago, bank accounts felt secure and they paid interest. This encouraged the virtue of thrift and saving. But today, bank accounts pay virtually nothing, and they've shifted from low risk to high risk. For example, did you know your money deposited in most U.S. banks could be subject to limited withdrawal and even confiscation? Oh, yes. And that's just the first of 19 risks explained in a new white paper entitled Don't Bank on It. You still think your bank deposits are safe? You better get this vital new Don't Bank on It white paper now. Call the number on the screen or visit SwissAmerica.com, the gold standard. Learn how simple it is to become your own banker today.
Now everyone who uses catheters can get a better catheter with Liberator Medical's free catheter sample pack. These new catheters are better than ever, easier to use, more convenient, comfortable, virtually pain-free. Don't wait. Call now and get your free catheter sample pack. There's the all-new compact catheter for women, pre-lubricated, no drips, no mess, fits in your purse. The self-lubricated catheter, it lubricates itself in the package, comfortable, no mess. The closed system catheter, pre-lubricated with its own collection bag, proven to reduce UTIs. The discreet pocket catheter, curved to fit in your pocket to go anywhere. The polished eyelet catheter for micro-smooth comfort, reduces friction and pain. Call now. We'll also bill Medicare and your insurance for you. Call for your free catheter sample pack with free shipping. Call Liberator Medical.
Call 1-800-344-6777. That's 1-800-344-6777.
Is your property a jungle choked with overgrown saplings and brush? Take back your land with a DR Field and Brush Mower. Nothing stops the DR. Thick grass and weeds, out-of-control brush, briars, or canes, even 3-inch thick trees are no match for America's favorite brush mower. Lock it in and rip it up. Clear it out, clean it up, and rediscover the land you've lost. And with optional attachments, the self-propelled DR Field and Brush Mower converts into a finish mower, a snow thrower, a portable chipper, or a grater blade. It's a field and brush cutter and so much more.
Call 1-800-456-2023 for a free buyer's guide and DVD. You'll learn how you can try a DR at home for 6 months for as low as $58 a month and get free shipping. Hurry, this offer won't last. Call 1-800-456-2023. Online at drfieldbrush.com.
Hi, I'm Ben Affleck. The only thing better than playing a hero in the movies is being a hero in real life. Like the 50,000 veterans who returned from Iraq and Afghanistan with devastating injuries. They are true heroes, and they're why I'm proud to support Paralyzed Veterans of America. For more than 60 years, Paralyzed Veterans of America has made a promise to never leave a fallen comrade behind. They make sure veterans with spinal cord injuries get the quality medical care, rehabilitation, and housing they need when they come home. They stay with our fallen heroes for the long term, offering counseling, job training, and support to help them regain the freedom and independence they fought so hard for, all at no cost to them. Our veterans fought for us. Let's fight for them. To learn more about how you can help, visit pva.org. That's pva.org. We will never leave a fallen comrade behind.
No country would expect anybody to do that, but Prime Minister Netanyahu forgets the fact that Gaza is still under military occupation. He forgets the fact that the Palestinian people are still under his military occupation, and therefore he cannot compare the situation there to any situation around the world. I think the root cause of all the violence that we have witnessed over the last 48 years since Israel occupied the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem in 1967 is due to the continued Israeli military occupation.
Right. All right. Welcome to Gimme 5, ladies and gentlemen. As the rockets keep flying, although I am told they were down a little bit overnight in Israel and into Gaza as a result. That's the top-ranking Palestinian official in the United States on Face the Nation yesterday, blaming it all on Israel, blaming it all on the occupation, of course. So when Israel took all the land from the Palestinians, you know, the land they won from Jordan and Syria and Egypt, but in revisionist history, they won it from the Palestinians and now occupy it. They don't occupy Gaza anymore, and that's where the rockets are flying from. Here's more.
I think our objective right now is to reach an immediate ceasefire, return to the 2012 understandings between Hamas and Israel. You have to also to remember, so far Israel have carried out 1,300 airstrikes against the Gaza Strip, dropped more than 1,000 tons of explosive on the most densely populated area on the face of earth. 170 Palestinians have been killed so far, 1,200 wounded, and including destruction of more than 1,500 homes, hospitals, mosques, schools were targeted. You cannot target a building even though if you suspected that a militant is there. According to Amnesty International, that's a war crime.
You know what? You should have thought of all this before you started lobbing rockets from the most densely populated area in the world, okay? And you could stop it by stop lobbing the rockets from the most densely populated area of the world. More.
But, Ambassador, there were weapons being hidden in mosques. These things just go on. I mean, they are putting these weapons and things in civilian homes, and the Israelis say, look, we're even, calling them on the phone and say, get out of there.
Yeah, calling, I mean, they've done that in the beginning. Now, according to civilians in Gaza whom we spoke to, they no longer warn people. Yesterday, in an attack on a building to take out, supposedly, allegedly, one militant, they killed 18 people in the process. Tell me what law, what international law allows a country, a superiorly militarily country, to target a civilian population in order to take out targets?
That's all Hamas is doing. Hamas is a recognized terrorist organization, part of his government, and they're firing rockets indiscriminately in hopes that they kill a kindergartner or a school bus or any civilian. That's what they're targeting. They're not targeting anybody. And they blame Israel? for accidentally killing civilians when they go after the rockets and go after the terrorists and go after the rocket launchers and go after the tunnels? By the way, why aren't the Gaza people in those tunnels for protection? No room for the people and the rockets and the terrorists, so screw the people. More.
I think that the purpose of that reconciliation effort by the PLO was to bring Hamas into the fold of the PLO. When we were divided, Israel kept saying, who should we talk to? The leaders in Ramallah, West Bank, or the ones in Gaza. Now that we are trying to unite our ranks so that whenever there are political negotiations with Israel, we can reach an agreement with Israel once and for all to end the conflict, the Israelis are saying we cannot talk to a united Palestinian front. So we are confused here. I think Hamas has been practical in its political positions in recent years. I don't think Hamas is seeking a confrontation with Israel.
Really? You don't think Hamas is seeking a confrontation with Israel? Excuse me. Hamas is firing the rockets. Hamas is sworn to the destruction of Israel. You don't think they're seeking a confrontation? You know what, folks? It's this kind of insanity. Insanity. They're a terrorist organization sworn to the destruction of Israel. They're now at one in the government with his group, Fatah, and Israel's supposed to make peace with these folks. On the Steve Malzberg Show.
I'm at St. Jude because I had a cancer inside of me. They diagnosed me with a brain tumor. You have to be strong and don't give up. Attitude is everything. You have to fight.
Imagine your doctor tells you your child has cancer with only months to live. Where would you go? What would you do? Who would you turn to? Fortunately, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is fighting every day to save children's lives. And with a gift of just $19 a month, you can join the fight.
This is my kid that they're giving back to me. I am so grateful.
At St. Jude, no family ever receives a bill. In fact, no family pays St. Jude for anything. That's why your gift of $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, is so important.
When I thought that I might lose my son, they gave me hope. You are not only saving a child's life, you're breathing life back into that family.
If I hadn't come here, I wouldn't have my son.
St. Jude's life-saving research and treatment is shared freely with hospitals around the world.
St. Jude gives you hope and happiness. They're helping us live. Maybe in the future, kids won't have to go through this. We'll find a cure and it'll all be over.
Please, call and become a St. Jude Partner in Hope right now.
I'm Miranda Khan here with your latest Newsmax Now update. And we begin in Israel, where Hamas militants continue their assault on the country by firing long-range rockets deeper into the region. One rocket hit a residential home in southern Israel today. The strike caused no reported injuries. Hamas militants based in Gaza have fired nearly 1,000 rockets in the recent conflict so far. Meanwhile, Israeli military officials are retaliating with targeted airstrikes and are even considering a ground invasion. That being said, despite these recent turn of events, Israel's president says there's a growing need for a ceasefire with Hamas. Israeli airstrikes have killed more than 170 Palestinians so far. President Perez says there's no useful purpose to continue the campaign. The leader of Hamas disagrees, saying his fighters will continue defending their people. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, on the other hand, pledged that he'll stop Hamas by any means necessary. And a leading representative for United Nations agency assessed the conflict between Israel and Gaza today and agreed with Israel's president, calling for Israel to discontinue their airstrikes in the region. Demonstrators also gathered in support for Gaza, waving posters showing images of injured Palestinians. Well, Germany may have won the World Cup, but many Americans, well, as you can see, they're still celebrating. They're still cheering all around. Fans of the German soccer team gathered in New York to celebrate the victory. Germany defeated Argentina 1-0 in the final match. Many analysts say this year's record viewing of the World Cup marks a rising American interest in the sport, including our very own Steve Malzberg, right? At least that's the word from Ed Berliner. Steve.
All right, folks, welcome to hour number 2 of the Ed Berliner says it, it's got to be true. All right, folks, welcome back. And we're going to be joined by Israeli Ambassador Ido Haroni, the Consul General of Israel here in New York, and he'll be here to discuss the latest in the current crisis in Israel. Then Paul Vallely, retired Major General in the U.S. Army. He will be here to discuss the fact that Sergeant Bo Bergdahl is returning to regular duty. And then the road to the White House. Renowned political strategist and pollster John McLaughlin joins us for our segment today, and we'll discuss the possible presidential candidacy of Congressman Paul Ryan. That's right. We'll see if he will run after being the vice presidential candidate on the ticket with Mitt Romney in 2012. All that, Gimme 5 and more on this hour of the Steve Malzberg Show.
Ready? Fire away. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City. A fusion of politics, commentary, entertainment, and sports. Steve and his team bring you the latest news and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
Hamas and the other terrorist groups like Islamic Jihad are firing from Gaza when their Rocketeers and their command posts are embedded in homes, hospitals, next to kindergartens, mosques. And so we're trying to operate to target them surgically. But the difference between us is that we're using missile defense to protect our civilians, and they're using their civilians to protect their missiles. So naturally, they're responsible for all the civilian deaths that occur accidentally. We're sorry for any accidental civilian death, but it's the Hamas that bears complete responsibility.
All right, folks, we're gonna have to get out of that soundbite and video. Unfortunately, it was double playing, or whatever you want to call it. Sorry for the technical difficulty. And as promised, joining us now is Ambassador Ido Haroni, the Consul General of Israel here in New York. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for joining us, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
The latest, we keep hearing, that the rockets keep flying from Gaza. Of course, the media likes to call it tit for tat. They like to equate Israel's defense of her land with the attacks by Hamas. We don't do that here on this show, of course. There's talk of a ceasefire. Barack Obama offered to broker a ceasefire. Is that the answer? Wouldn't a ceasefire just basically be another timeout for Hamas to regroup, rearm, and do it again down the road?
There are two aspects here. The first is what you do operationally. The stated goal of this operation, Protective Edge, is to restore calm and quiet and stability to Israel's southern region and also Israel's central region. But there's another aspect here, and that is the context of this conversation. The context of this conversation is not a territorial dispute. We're looking here at a century-old onslaught of the Palestinians against Jewish national sovereignty in the land of Israel. We're looking at an organization that is uncompromising, brutal, in the first place, against its own people.
Well, absolutely. When you hear Benjamin Netanyahu, as he said yesterday, say that the Palestinians use their civilians to protect their rockets as opposed to what Israel does, it's so true. And one has to wonder, where are the bomb shelters for the Palestinians? We know there were 1,000 or more tunnels that they could easily put some people into if they had the desire to do so, but they elect to have the casualties and show the world, hey, look at evil Israel, they're killing our people, when not only do they, in my view, provoke the response from Israel constantly, but they're willing to leave their people in harm's way by using them as shields for missiles or factories or both, and mosques, as you know, same thing, and hospitals and schoolyards. So you're dealing with a kind of a messed up culture.
It's worse than what you just described, Steve. In fact, we have evidence that Hamas is instructing their own people not to comply with Israel's early warning system. And you know, we have two methods that we're using. The first is we actually take the time to call people in their private homes on their cell phones. And then the second thing that we do, we just hand out leaflets announcing in advance that we're going to operate in a certain area and that people are asked to leave. Hamas issued a directive by their so-called Minister of Interior instructing the residents of Gaza not to comply with Israeli early warning, which I think is criminally reckless and irresponsible in the first place for the people of Hamas. But you know what, Steve? It's indicative of the overall approach. This is an organization that does not nurture life. This is an organization that represents an entirely different kind of civilization, as you said.
Yet when I see the Palestinian ambassador on TV yesterday on Face the Nation presenting his side, defending Hamas, you know, accusing Israel, the occupation must end, the rocket attacks are inhumane, and even if there are human shields, it's against, it's a war crime to go after a target if there are civilians there. I mean, to try to change the rules of warfare to, hey, as long as we put people there, you can't touch us. I mean, that's insane. But how do you deal with a government that now consists of Hamas? I mean, that they are part of the unity government. The whole landscape has changed fairly recently, has it not?
Yes, and that's why one of the things that we expect the Palestinian National Movement to do, headed by Mahmoud Abbas, known as Abu Mazen, is to break the political alliance formed with Hamas, because you can't say, and by the way, we give him credit for advocating nonviolence. That's a great thing. This was not the case with his predecessor. However, you can't advocate nonviolence and at the same time sign a pact with the terrorist organization. So one of the things that must happen is that this pact should be broken. This should be canceled. And the Palestinian National Authority is expected to distance itself. And by the way, some things are already happening. For example, for the first time we see in many, many years, at least since the 90s, that in some parts of the Gaza Strip, when we announced that we're going to operate militarily in a certain neighborhood, and we asked people to leave their homes, for example, in a place called Beit Lahia, which is in the Gaza Strip, people declined to accept Hamas's directives and actually complied with Israel's request, you know, of their own will. And there are reports of thousands of people that left Beit Lahia because of the information that we provided them with. So that's a sign that even within Gaza itself, Palestinians are beginning to question, what is the logic here of what we're doing? What is the rationale here? What is the end goal? What's Hamas's strategy? What do they want? After all, they do know they cannot destroy the state of Israel with rockets. They can disrupt our lives, as they did, dramatically even, but then there's a price that they're paying. What is it that they want? And of course, we know the answer. The answer is they simply refuse to accept our very right to exist.
The end game here for Israel. I heard that you echoed just at the beginning the sentiments of the Prime Minister yesterday to restore peace or calm or quiet, whatever you said. There are some on the right, even within the government of Israel, that says that's not enough. You must finish off Hamas. I understand the tough logistics with the civilian population, the extreme overcrowdedness of Gaza, etc. But is it enough? There were a lot of people disappointed that you guys didn't finish off Hezbollah in the last war against Hezbollah, and then they're going to live to fight again as well. Can you destroy or deplete Hamas to the point where they're not going to bother you for a long, long time, or is that not the goal?
Well, theoretically speaking, in terms of Israel's military might, in terms of Israel's operational
You could do whatever you
capabilities,
want.
we could level the
Right.
whole area. That's not the question. The question is, can it be done from a political point of view? The Israeli cabinet, which is Israel's commander-in-chief, is comprised of several elements. Each element has its own agenda, each element has its own constituency, and has its own leader. And obviously the decisions that the cabinet produces at the end are always a result of this discussion between the various factions that comprise the cabinet. So what we do know is this. As you said correctly, there are voices within the Israeli political system that call for going what's called a massive, comprehensive ground operation. But even they say we should go in, get the job done, and get out.
Right. Nobody wants to occupy Gaza.
Nobody wants to occupy Gaza long term because this has tremendous implications for the state of Israel. The second group says this is not the time to do it now. They have all sorts of considerations. Are we willing to pay the price in life? Are we willing to engage ourselves into in this very long operation? This may last 3 or 4 months. Are we willing to engage in this the debate with the world? What's going to happen? And so on and so forth. So, like anything in Israeli politics, the outcome will be a result of a lively discussion.
Ceasefire, is that something you'd be interested in the U.S. brokering? I know Kerry's going to the area supposedly tomorrow. Are you interested in a ceasefire now?
Well, as the Prime Minister said, and he said it very clearly, what we want is quiet and calm in the South. If this could be achieved, then, you know, the Prime Minister said...
Including the ceasefire?
Of course, the Hamas made the decision to escalate. This conflict was actually imposed on us by Hamas. We did not start firing rockets.
Let me ask you, I know Israel arrested or charged the 3 Jewish members of Israel, countrymen of Israel, with the death of the Palestinian. Where are we in finding the perpetrators who killed the 3 Israeli teenagers? And who's responsible for finding? Is it the PA? Is it Israel in conjunction with the PA?
The overriding responsibility for security when it comes to Israeli concerns, of course, lies within the authority of the State of Israel and the Israel Defense Forces, which is the ruler in the parts under Israeli control.
We only have a minute. I just want to let you know we only have a minute. Go ahead, please.
We know who did it. We know who they are. We've known
specifically, not just Hamas, but specifically.
We know their names. We know who they are. We have their
tell me
pictures.
what's hampering you from getting them?
Well, they're hiding somewhere, and we don't know where they are, but we'll find them. We'll bring
with the
them
help
to
of the
justice.
Palestinian Authority, or without?
With the help, it would be better. If without, we can make it too. We can find them, but we know exactly who they are. We know which families they come from. We know that they come from a very well-established, well-connected family within Hamas circles. And there's no doubt in our minds that they were operating in the spirit of Hamas, if not under a general directive issued by Hamas.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much. I hope you'll come back, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. All right, folks, we will continue with retired Major General Paul Vallely and talk about the return of Sergeant Bagdal to active duty. How's that possible? We'll talk about it right here on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax Television.
Meet Mary. She loves to shop online with her debit card. And so does Bill, an identity thief who stole Mary's identity, took over her bank accounts, and stole her hard-earned money. Unfortunately, millions of Americans just like you learn all it may take is a little misplaced information to wreak havoc on your life. This is identity theft, and no one helps stop it better than LifeLock. LifeLock offers the most comprehensive identity theft protection available. If Mary had LifeLock's bank account alerts, she may have been notified before it was too late. LifeLock's credit notification service is on the job 24/7. As soon as they detect a threat to your identity within their network, they will alert you, protecting you before the damage is done. LifeLock has the most comprehensive identity theft protection available, guarding your social security number, your money, your credit, even the equity in your home.
My years as a prosecutor taught me that we all need to protect ourselves from crime.
In today's world, that includes identity theft. It's a serious problem. We all have to protect ourselves.
While identity theft can't be completely stopped, no one works harder to protect you than LifeLock. You even get a $1 million service guarantee. That's security no one can beat. You have so much to protect and nothing to lose when you call LifeLock right now and get 60 days of identity theft protection risk-free. That's right, 60 days risk-free. Use promo code NOTME. Order now and get this document shredder to keep sensitive documents out of the wrong hands. A $29 value, free. Don't wait until you become the next victim. Call 1-800-918-3128 for 60 days of LifeLock identity theft protection risk-free and get a document shredder free. Use promo code NOTME. Call 1-800-918-3128 now.
If you're one of the 15 million Americans with food allergies, you might feel anxious about dining out, but you don't have to be. Visit safeair.org for more information and resources to help you enjoy a safer restaurant experience.
A public service message from Food Allergy Research and Education.
Politics, commentary, entertainment, sports, news and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
All right, folks, welcome back. And we go from the situation in Israel to a situation right here at home. And we're all well aware of the plight of Sergeant Bo Bergdahl and the fact that he was traded for by Barack Obama, 5 key Taliban thugs, and the accusations surrounding Sergeant Bergdahl's behavior in how he went missing, and the letters, the emails from his father, the letter that he left at the base reportedly saying that, you know, he was ashamed to be an American. And now he's going back to active duty. His rehab is finished. I don't know what happened to the investigation. Let's welcome in our friend, my good friend, General Paul Vallely, retired, of course, general and founder of Stand Up America. And I should tell you, General, that your ears might have been burning because just before the break, Ambassador Ido Aharoni said, "Oh, I took the general to Israel several years ago."
Yes, that's right. I know him very well.
Very nice man. Well, I'm privileged to have both of you. All right, tell me what's going on here. I thought there would be an investigation. I thought there would then be proceedings to determine his guilt or his innocence. How is it possible that he's going back to serve in the Army while this is all outstanding?
Well, what they've done, Steve, they've categorized Bergdahl as a prisoner of war. They've announced that a Article 232 investigation will be conducted and established under Major General Dahl, D-A-H-L. Now, in order to conduct that investigation, they bring him back on active duty again. They're going to pay probably $350,000 in cash, tax-free to him by being a prisoner of war. But the Article 32 investigation, now that the reintegration has been completed, will be signed to a unit, and that investigation will go forward with the witnesses in regards to his whole situation, when he left his post up until the time he was released, and to our special forces there in Afghanistan. So that's the way it's laid out right now.
This is pretty standard operating procedure, or is there such a thing when by the way, it's pretty weird that the guy's name is D-A-H-L and it's Bergdahl, D-A-H-L. That's very strange. But maybe we should play those numbers or letters in a lottery somewhere. But anyway, is there such thing as standard operating procedure when it comes to these kinds of events, or is this kind of unprecedented with Bo Bergdahl?
Well, before any conclusions are reached based on the investigation and before it would go to a court-martial under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, it has to be established that he, in fact, is guilty, perhaps of desertion and treason, and so they'll pursue that in the investigation under Major General Dahl. That's why he has to be reassigned to a unit. He'll be placed back on active duty again. and they'll go through that. Now, what we've got to focus on, Steve, is in fact if they call the witnesses of his platoon members, and they should be the very first ones that General Dahl should call forward, because they were with him in that platoon when he left his post and walked over to the Taliban.
Yeah, and they were lamenting the fact recently that they hadn't heard from anybody. Does that just mean they haven't begun this yet, or should they have heard from someone by now?
Well, General Dahl has been appointed. He has started the preliminaries. So they will line out, or line up, I should say, the number of witnesses to the investigation, and then they will start that investigation almost like a grand jury. They'll bring those witnesses in. They'll testify as to Bergdahl's status at the time, what actions he took, what actions he didn't take, and if in fact establish whether he was a deserter or in fact a prisoner of war. That's what the investigation is supposed to pursue as at school.
Now, General, talk about the interaction he'll have now with his new platoon or his new assignment, and how you expect those soldiers will react to him.
Well, I think they'll hold him pretty close in a barracks of some kind with some other soldiers, I would assume. But he'll be closely guarded because he would be a potential target physically from the other soldiers if they knew, in fact, and were convinced that he was a deserter. So he will be closely guarded through this whole investigation.
What about the other way? I mean, I'm sure he was checked out. He's finished his rehab. I'm sure that includes mental stability. Nonetheless,
correct.
You know, if we believe the evidence that the New York Times even wrote, the letter he left when he was last on an American base was he was ashamed to be an American. I mean, can we trust anybody, but should we trust someone who has left that kind of note? And is the military on active duty, true, there's an investigation pending, but is the military on active duty a place for someone like that who has access, you know, quite frankly, to weapons and guns?
Well, that's the way it's set up under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And then you have certain policies and provisions for a prisoner of war. And so this is being handled by the book as far as I can see. The question is, will it be influenced by the White House in any way? Because we know in the past under Colonel Lakin, for example, the White House really intervened in that court-martial and placed undue, I would say, stress on the military judge at that time. So they can be influenced, but we hope our established military leaders, such as General Dahl, will firmly go by the book and go by what's outlined in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and that we find out the truth again.
Yeah, no, very, very important. General, thank you for joining us on short notice. Always great to talk to you. Say hello to your wonderful wife, sir.
Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure. Paul Vallely, ladies and gentlemen, retired Major General and founder of a great organization, Stand Up America. Hey, they're following procedure, and that's the way it should be. I just don't understand. I mean, if I was a soldier and this man came onto my base, I wouldn't do anything illegal, or I wouldn't harm the man, but gee whiz, how well could it sit with me that this man who's been accused, I know, the key word is accused, but we've seen the evidence. We as a nation have seen the evidence, indisputable evidence, I should say, from the letter to the emails allegedly sent by his father about closing Gitmo and the death of every Afghani child will be avenged, and the whole thing. I'm not proud of my country. I'm ashamed to be an American. We'll be back with more of the Steve Malzberg Show. Don't go away.
Excuse me, what do you think you'd pay for this smartphone?
A few hundred.
That's top of the line, more like $425. More like $9.
What? That's not possible.
It is on DealDash.com. See, DealDash.com is the fair and honest bidding site. This top of the line laptop went for around $40. That can't be.
Incredible.
I know. Everyone says it's too good to be true.
But it's true. DealDash.com gets people real savings every day, big savings. And if you're not satisfied, you get your money back. On DealDash.com, professional cameras sell for as low as $15. $50 gift cards go for $20. Laptops can be had for less than $10. And shipping is always free. It's perfect for gifts or just everyday necessities. Visit DealDash.com today and start bidding.
Is this from Deal Dash?
Uh-huh.
How much?
You don't want to know.
DealDash.com. See how much you can save.
When Bob got into the accident, I was terrified. His injuries were so severe, but once we knew he was going to be okay, what then?
I couldn't go back to work for a long time, and we got way behind on our bills.
We'd hired an attorney, but when our case kept dragging on, we didn't know how we were going to get by. Thankfully, our attorney knew about Oasis Legal Finance.
Oasis looked at our case and got us the money the very next day.
What a relief it was. We didn't have to wait until our case settled, and the money from Oasis helped us when we needed it most.
At first, I wasn't so sure. What if we lost the case? How would we be able to pay back Oasis? But then I found out if we did lose, we wouldn't have to pay them back, so there was no risk in doing it. No risk.
If you were involved in an accident and hired an attorney to fight for the compensation you deserve but need money now before your case settles, then call Oasis today. Oasis has given millions of dollars to people like you who need money fast while waiting for their case to settle. There's no risk, so call now.
I was hurt badly in a car accident just after my wife gave birth. We were counting on the cash from my lawsuit to get caught up, but the case took forever.
Honestly, we didn't know what we were going to do. Then we saw an Oasis TV commercial and called. We were approved and got money from Oasis the next day.
Not in a week, the very next day.
I was hurt at work and filed a workers' comp claim. I called Oasis and they gave me the cash I needed. Unfortunately, I ended up losing my case, but Oasis let us keep the money. They kept their promise and we didn't need to pay them back.
There are no out-of-pocket costs and no payments until your case is settled. If you lose your case, you don't have to repay Oasis. There's no risk. Call Oasis now to see how much money you can get before your case settles.
Call now, 1-800-562-8184. 1-800-562-8184. 1-800-562-8184.
I'm Miranda Kahn here with your latest Newsmax Now update. Tensions in the West Bank continue to rise as the death toll in the Israeli-Hamas conflict grows. Funerals were held in the West Bank today. Hundreds of Palestinians gathered to pay their respects to a 21-year-old killed in an altercation with Israeli soldiers. The Israeli military says they're investigating the incident. Meanwhile, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is asking the United Nations to take a larger role in the conflict between Hamas and Israel. Abbas made an appeal to UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon for the UN to protect the Palestinian people. The Palestinian leader says he hopes for a speedy response from the top UN official. And that's your latest Newsmax Now update. Back to the Steve Malzberg Show.
All right, folks, welcome back. And don't forget, coming up in the next segment, our Road to the White House segment as we continue with week number 2. Today we take a look at the possible presidential candidacy of the 2012 Republican vice presidential candidate, Paul Ryan. And John McLaughlin will be here to talk about it. Nobody better than that. So keep it tuned right here for part 6 in our ongoing Road to the White House series. I came up with 6. I knew last week had 5 days, and this is day number 1. And I went to New York City public schools when they were still pretty good. So I came up with 6 all by myself. All right, I want you to watch Harry Reid. Watch and listen to this.
You know, we have so much to do this month, but the one thing we're going to do during this work period, sooner rather than later, is to ensure that women's lives are not determined by virtue of 5 white men. This Hobby Lobby decision is outrageous.
Let me just say, I mean, the problem with doing this is sometimes you have to bite your tongue. And I'm trying very, very hard, very, very hard. But how dare this man? How dare he refer to the 5 males? First of all, I don't know what he's talking about, because the 5, talking about 5 white men in a 5-4 decision. Clarence Thomas isn't white. Okay, that's number 1, or maybe that's number 2. I don't care if Clarence Thomas was white. Okay, I don't care the fact that he's counting wrong. He's got his facts wrong. He's excluding Clarence Thomas, or maybe that's a little jab at Clarence Thomas, and he's not black enough for even Harry Reid. Okay, I don't know, and I don't really care. What gets me is that the majority leader of the United States Senate, the same clown, and yes, he's a clown, who stood there when asked a question by Dana Bash of CNN during the government shutdown, and was asked, why don't you pass the bill in piecemeal, a piecemeal bill that the House passed that would guarantee the National Institute of Health would operate and could save even 1 kid with cancer? And this clown said, why would I want to save a kid with cancer? I have people who are furloughed back in my home state. They have their own problems. That should have been enough to run them the heck out of politics, okay? Then constantly, day after day after day, calling 2 American citizens who donate so much, so many hundreds of $millions to building hospitals and cancer centers and to children, calling them un-American. And again, I don't care if they donate nothing. They're American citizens. He's the majority leader of the Senate. And this clown calls them un-American. And now this clown, and I'm being generous with that word, that's a bite my tongue word, okay? This clown now says, we're not going to let 5 white men determine women's health, blah, blah. 5 white men? What has happened to this country? How is that allowable? How does he get away with that? Did you hear anybody in the media question that? In the mainstream media? I'm sure some conservative media outlets might have. I don't know. But how is that acceptable? Could someone say that about black men or Hispanic men or gay men? It's a disgrace. He is a disgrace and a clown. All right, folks, now I'm smiling. And we're coming back with the road to the White House. But first, here's Dr. Chauncey Crandall, no clown he, with how to eat like a caveman.
Heart disease is the biggest killer disease in America, and this doesn't surprise me. We are addicted to starches, sugars, fatty meats, and salt. People who live in countries with little heart disease eat very differently. One way some people stay heart healthy is by following what is known as the caveman or Stonehenge diet, so named because of its similarity to the way our prehistoric ancestors ate. People who follow this type of diet live off local fruits and root vegetables and get their protein mostly from fish and wild game they shoot themselves. Now, since most of us don't hunt or fish for all our protein, here are some simple tips on how you can start to eat like a caveman, modern day style. First, fill up on fruits and vegetables. Eat them first and you'll be less hungry. Feast on fish, which is rich in nutrients but not in calories. Choose fatty fish like mackerel, herring, sardines, and salmon, which are rich in heart-healthy omega-3 fatty acids. Get out and go for a walk. Remember, our ancestors were hunters and gatherers, so they didn't spend their time sitting in front of a TV or computer all day. If you live more like a caveman or a cave woman, your heart will love you for it. I'm Dr. Chauncey Crandall, and thank you for watching this Heart Health Minute. Remember, it's never too late to prevent or reverse heart disease. Right now, I invite you to discover your own risk for heart disease or even a heart attack by taking my quick, free online.
I met St. Jude because I had a cancer inside of me. They diagnosed me with a brain tumor. You have to be strong and don't give up. attitude is everything. You have to fight.
Imagine your doctor tells you your child has cancer with only months to live. Where would you go? What would you do? Who would you turn to? Fortunately, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is fighting every day to save children's lives. And with a gift of just $19 a month, you can join the fight.
This is my kid that they're giving back to me. I am so grateful.
At St. Jude, no family ever receives a bill. In fact, no family pays St. Jude for anything. That's why your gift of $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, is so important.
When I thought that I might lose my son, they gave me hope.
You are not only saving a child's life, you're breathing life back into that family.
If I hadn't have come here, I wouldn't have my son.
St. Jude's life-saving research and treatment is shared freely with hospitals around the world.
St. Jude gives you hope and happiness. They're helping us live. Maybe in the future, kids won't have to go through this. We'll find a cure and it'll all be over.
Please, call and become a St. Jude Partner in Hope right now.
Why 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? We choose to go to the moon.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Politics, commentary, entertainment, sports, news and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
Obamacare, as much as anything else, explains why a presidency that began with such anticipation now comes to such a disappointing close. It began with a perfect AAA credit rating for the United States. It ends with a downgraded America. It all started off with stirring speeches, Greek columns, the thrill of something new. Now, all that's left is a presidency adrift, surviving on slogans that already seem tired, grasping at a moment that has already passed, like a ship trying to sail on yesterday's wind.
You know, just say you go back to 2012, folks, and you just wonder how on earth Barack Obama won again. Welcome to the Road to the White House, segment number 6 in our continuing series here, or should I say installment number 6. And that was Paul Ryan. Today we take a look at the possibility of his candidacy for the Republican presidential nomination. And joining us to do that is renowned political strategist and pollster John McLaughlin. Hello, John.
Steve, great to be here with you.
Always great to talk to you, my friend. All right, let me ask you about Mr. Ryan. First of all, do you think he's going to run?
I don't know yet, but he's left the door open because, you know, back in May he met with some potential major donors in New York, and he just told them he's leaving the door open to it and he'd consider it. So it's a way to let them know it's a definite possibility. I mean, he certainly has the national recognition. He certainly has support within the Republican Party, and he certainly has there's definitely a path to the nomination for him if he wants to make that commitment, because he's one of the few that actually poll in double digits. We have a lot of candidates who are throwing their names out there that they might run, and he's right up there with Ron Paul, Jeb Bush, Mike Huckabee. He's in that double-digit club, so he definitely could do it. And he's got favorables usually in the 60-70% range with Republicans nationally.
And that is, by any measure, that's unusually good, correct?
Yes. I mean, certainly he did well. He even though everyone was hoping in the Republican Party that he would have been the vice president, he did well during the campaign. He certainly created a positive image with a positive message. And the thing that makes Paul unique is he could really occupy the pro-growth message that Republicans need to recapture enthusiasm, to recapture hope for not just for our party, but to create a majority coalition with younger voters and with independent voters. Because right now the economy is still flat as a pancake, and Paul Ryan is seen as the heir to the Jack Kemp message within the Republican Party, that pro-growth economic Republicans need a place where we have an optimistic message and not one of just doom and gloom or root canal Republicanism where all we're worried about is entitlement reform. And instead we're talking about pay raises for middle-class families, a way to get ahead for working-class families. Younger people, where he talked about in the presidential campaign, where you don't want to be living in your parents' basement. You want to have your own place. You want to have economic opportunity. You want to have hope. And he owns that message.
Can that message, well, let me ask before we put up some of the impediments that he might face. One of them might be, he was the VP candidate on a losing ticket against an Obama administration that really, but like I said at the beginning here, in my view, should have lost because all the things that Ryan was saying was absolutely true then. It's going to be true in 2016, but you won't have the luxury of running against Obama again. You can't say Obama's coming back. Let's say it's Hillary, then he's running against somebody, and I'm sure she'll separate herself. She already has said, look at my husband's economy, how he ran his economy. She'll be saying we're going to throw back to the success of the 90s. So it'll be, let me ask you, will it be harder on the economy to run against, whether it's Hillary or somebody else, and get the message out, as opposed to when he ran as a VP candidate in 2012, and it was against the failed policies of a guy who was going to get in the White House again and continue those failed policies?
I think more of a challenge is he's perceived as a leader in the House, and he's better known than a lot of the House leadership, where he has a platform and a forum where his position in the House, he can actually advocate things that would create economic growth, whether it's tax reform, whether it's budget reform. He can do things on his own with his own brand, which was why Mitt Romney picked him in the first place. Ironically, there's two things going on right now where people are still floating that Mitt Romney may make a third run. And if that happens, Paul may have a big decision whether he's going to run against somebody that he was on part of the ticket with. The other thing is, Hillary Clinton is distancing herself from the Obama politics right now, both in foreign policy and on economics. Yeah. And so there's all sorts of opportunity and challenges coming up right now. But I think Paul, because of his leadership place in the House, Congressman Ryan, holds his own destiny in his own hands, the way he can talk about his own vision and the policies that he'd want to enact, and he can actually put them forth in the House.
Right, now we have a lot, if we're talking about getting the nomination, it's one conversation. If we're talking about running in the general election, it's a different conversation. But let's focus for now, you and me, on the getting the nomination, which he would have to do first before he could get to the general election. And let's put up some of the things that might be an impediment or considered an impediment to him. I mean, one of them is, as I mentioned, he failed some might view it that he failed to help get Romney elected, and that ticket did not win. Another is, that he's supported immigration reform. He has also supported an overhaul of the tax system, which when you look at it, it's good. But then when you start talking about some of the tax breaks, mortgage interest deduction, and the deductions that would have to go away, it becomes less popular. So talk about those two issues, immigration and tax reform, and whether or not those will help him or hurt him in getting the nomination.
Well, I want to address the first point you brought up about being a part of a failed ticket with Romney. What was interesting was at the end of the campaign, a lot of people blamed the comment about the 47%. Congressman Ryan really comes from the 47%. He's a working middle class Wisconsin, native, where he can relate to the working class people. So let's chalk that up as an opportunity for him. As far as immigration reform, the vast majority of Americans want immigration reform. The question is what you put in it. What they don't like is a broken system right now where you see young children now coming to the United States and coming here, and they're going to be given amnesty by the Obama administration by executive order. That's not what Paul Ryan's talking about. That's not what any Republican's talking about. We're talking about a system that secures the border first, and then deals with the other problems that we have to have. And the last point that you had about overhauling the tax system, well, the trade-off, there's a lot of trade-offs that could be made where when I worked for Steve Forbes and he was running for president, he told people if you like the current system, you could keep it. If you want, you could go to a flat tax system where you could fill out your taxes on a postcard.
Right,
Where do you think people would pick?
Yeah, no, very, very, very good point. What about the media? You know what the media is going to do to any Republican, but with Paul Ryan, I think one of the things they'll pick on is he hates the poor. He wants Social Security reform and Medicare reform. Now, you and I know that that's not only necessary, but it's also a good thing. And it also came with choices. When he was putting forth his plan, if you want to, and only if you're over, 55 would it even affect you. If you're under 55, you're not even going to be, over 55, you won't even be touched, only if you're younger and you want to. I don't think he expressed that enough when he was putting forth his plan, but nonetheless, no matter what he says, the media will turn it around and portray it as being insensitive to the poor, wanting to cut programs, what he's faced up till now. So how can he overcome that?
Well, I think the biggest problem you have is they demagogue it in the shorthand. Like we all saw the ads where they had the guy pushing the old lady over the cliff in the wheelchair saying he was cutting Medicare.
Right.
The ironic part was the Democrats actually were the ones who cut Medicare to enact Obamacare. Obamacare has changed that whole attack in terms of right now. Congressman Ryan and the Republicans in Congress are working on trying to restore control of health care back to the individual. And the same thing, and the same opportunity would exist with Social Security if you had control instead of the government, because we don't trust this government anymore. So he really has to reframe the debate, talk about giving people personal control over their own health care again, talk about giving people personal control over their retirement accounts. Because we don't trust the government. Because right now we're not getting a return on our investment. The money's just going into the sinkhole.
Absolutely. One more for you. We got about 30 seconds off topic a little bit. Do you think Romney will run again?
It's been interesting, but it's been floating. I mean, he had his retreat out there, and it's been floating in the press in the past couple of weeks. He might. You never know.
And would he have a good shot?
There was a poll that came out that he was leading in New Hampshire. So,
interesting.
We all remember 2007. It was supposed to be Hillary Clinton, Rudy Giuliani. You never know.
You never know. John, always great to talk to you. Thank you for participating, my friend.
Thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure. John
Great
McLaughlin,
show.
ladies and gentlemen, political strategist and pollster. And tomorrow, another edition of The Road to the White House right here on the Steve Malzberg Show, same time. Do not miss it. Coming up next, Give Me 5 on the Steve Malzberg.
Do you sleep too hot while your partner sleeps too cool? Do you struggle to sleep at the right temperature? Now Sleep Number has a solution that's as revolutionary as its beds. Introducing the Sleep Number Dual Temp Layer. The amazing Sleep Number Dual Temp Layer allows both of you to select your ideal temperature for better sleep. The Sleep Number Dual Temp Layer works with any mattress brand. It features Active Air technology, which evenly distributes air to heat and cool each side to the temperature you prefer for head-to-toe comfort. Call or click now for this free $50 savings card and catalog.
My husband and I both prefer different temperatures. He likes to have his side of the bed a little bit warmer, and I like to have mine a little bit cooler, and we are finally sleeping better together.
After sleeping on a dual temp layer, I find that I have such a restful night's sleep that when I wake up in the morning, I am energized and I'm ready for the day.
All night long, you can each enjoy sleep at a temperature that perfectly matches what your body needs for comfortable sleep, so you can sleep better together. In a research study, 75% reported poor sleep because of their sleeping temperature. That's because your body's temperature naturally fluctuates at night. But with the Sleep Number Dual Temp Layer, you can sleep comfortably warm or cool. And because the revolutionary Sleep Number Dual Temp Layer helps solve an important sleep problem, it was selected as a very innovative product by Good Housekeeping. Remember, the Sleep Number Dual Temp Layer can be added to any mattress brand, so everyone can enjoy sleeping better at the perfect temperature. Call or click now.
Call 1-800-317-5283 or click now for a free $50 savings card and catalog with price list. For your peace of mind, the Sleep Number Dual Temp Layer comes with a 100-night in-home trial. Call 1-800-317-5283 or click now. That's 1-800-317-5283 for your free $50 savings card and catalog.
Attention seniors and baby boomers. A new website has been created just for you. MyBenefits811.com. At MyBenefits811.com, we reveal a weird trick that could help you add $152,000 to your Social Security payouts. For example, did you know how you file for Social Security can dramatically change the amount of money you collect? One simple step could add up to $1,000 to your monthly payouts. And other strategies we found reveal 33 ways for big savings on your health care. At MyBenefits811.com, you will also discover how you could save up to 50% on your groceries, along with 49 other ways to save as much as $50,000 starting today. Newsmax says MyBenefits811.com is a critical resource for anyone over the age of 50. So go to MyBenefits811.com now to find out how you could add extra money to your Social Security checks. That's MyBenefits811.com. MyBenefits811.com.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your closet. Still no jobs, just more stuff? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed. And they're the stuff inside your stuff. Our job is to unlock those jobs. And it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover keytar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
A deliberate Hamas terrorist weapon, and with the exception of chemical weapons or nuclear weapons, it's the ultimate terror weapon. And any country would act to defend itself against this. We're doing exactly what any country would do, you would do, if you were targeted from across the border. You would try to pinpoint the rocketeers. That's what we're doing.
All right, folks, welcome to Gimme 5. In the previous hour, we brought you the Palestinian side of this with my commentary in between the videos. And now we're bringing you the Israeli side with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also on Face the Nation yesterday. And of course, although with this president, I'm not so sure how we would respond if rockets were flying at us from across the border. You never know. He might want to go meet the people shooting the rockets and have lunch with them. Shoot pool with them. Who knows? Play golf with them. Here's more.
Hamas and the other terrorist groups like Islamic Jihad are firing from Gaza when their rocketeers and their command posts are embedded in homes, hospitals, next to kindergartens, mosques. And so we're trying to operate to target them surgically. But the difference between us is that we're using missile defense to protect our civilians, and they're using their civilians to protect their missiles. So naturally, they're responsible for all the civilian deaths that occur accidentally. We're sorry for any accidental civilian death, but it's the Hamas that bears complete responsibility for such civilian casualties.
Absolutely. Are you listening, media? Hamas is responsible for the civilian casualties, not Israel. And Hamas uses their civilians to protect their rockets. And quite the opposite is true for Israel. It's a shame. It's a sin. And the Palestinian culture, that's what it's all about. They teach their kids to kill the Jew and hate the Jew, and they sacrifice their civilians for publicity. More.
Our goal is to achieve sustainable quiet and security for our people, and we're doing that by degrading Hamas and other terror capabilities. I'm not going to say right now how and when that goal will be achieved, whether by diplomatic and military means, but that goal has to be achieved. We need to have quiet restored to our people for for a sustainable period of time and not just for 5 minutes.
First, I thought that was a sign of weakness, that he was willing to have a ceasefire. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it means that he's going to try to take out as much of Hamas and their infrastructure and their rockets and their tunnels as possible. Let's see what else he has to say.
We've just received now a quiet alert. As we were giving this interview, can you hear this through the, can you hear this? No?
Yes.
Well, what you're hearing right now is the, that's the calm alert. In other words, when we began this interview, we were under bomb alert. And as the minutes passed, now we are being told that people can go out into the open air again. This is the kind of reality we're living in, Bob, and we'll do, as I said, whatever is necessary to put an end to this.
Right. What country could live like that? What people could survive living like that? And the answer is nobody. One final video.
Look, I think there are two separate issues. Whether we can achieve a negotiated settlement with those Palestinians who are willing to coexist next to Israel is one question, but that doesn't fly in the face of the other need. In fact, I think it is complemented by the other need that you've got to fight back and roll back the forces who are seeking to extinguish the Jewish state completely. We need to defeat those people, roll them back, or peace is not going to be possible. Because as far as Hamas is concerned, they couldn't care less if you come with a two-state solution, a three-state solution, or a four-state solution. They want a no-state solution, no Jewish state.
Absolutely, which is another issue. The Palestinian Authority, forget Hamas, sworn to the destruction of Israel, which is now part of the Palestinian Authority's government. But the Palestinian Authority will not recognize Israel as a Jewish state. So their two-state solution are two Palestinian states. The one now called Israel, which would be overrun by Palestinians through the so-called right of return, and the new Palestinian state. Isn't that a wonderful, wonderful plan? Oh, boy. All right, folks, you heard it all here first on the Steve Malzberg Show.
Meet Mary. She loves to shop online with her debit card. And so does Bill, an identity thief who stole Mary's identity, took over her bank accounts, and stole her hard-earned money. Unfortunately, millions of Americans just like you learn all it may take is a little misplaced information to wreak havoc on your life. This is identity theft, and no one helps stop it better than LifeLock. LifeLock offers the most comprehensive identity theft protection available. If Mary had LifeLock's bank account alerts, she may have been notified before it was too late. LifeLock's credit notification service is on the job 24/7. As soon as they detect a threat to your identity within their network, they will alert you, protecting you before the damage is done. LifeLock has the most comprehensive identity theft protection available, guarding your social security number, your money, your credit, even the equity in your home.
My years as a prosecutor taught me that we all need to protect ourselves from crime. In today's world, that includes identity theft. It's a serious problem. We all have to protect ourselves.
While identity theft can't be completely stopped, no one works harder to protect you than LifeLock. You even get a $1 million service guarantee. That's security no one can beat. You have so much to protect and nothing to lose when you call LifeLock right now and get 60 days of identity theft protection risk-free. That's right, 60 days risk-free. Use promo code NOTME. Order now and get this document shredder to keep sensitive documents out of the wrong hands. A $29 value, free. Don't wait until you become the next victim. Call 1-800-918-3128 for 60 days of LifeLock identity theft protection risk-free and get a document shredder free. Use promo code NOTME. Call 1-800-918-3128 now.
I'm Miranda Kahn here now with your latest Newsmax Now update. A senior Pentagon official says Qatar plans to purchase $11 billion worth of U.S. military equipment. The arms deal will provide Qatar with U.S. Patriot missiles and Apache helicopters. Officials say Qatar is investing in a missile defense system to protect itself from Iran, which has built up a threatening missile arsenal in the Gulf. Washington says this deal will strengthen America's security and diplomatic ties to Qatar. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is in Vienna to meet with his Iranian counterpart Javad Zarif today. This is the second consecutive day of talks between the two officials. The subject is Tehran's nuclear program. A senior State Department official says Kerry is there to gauge Iran's willingness to make the critical choices it needs to make. And Israel says it used a U.S.-supplied Patriot missile to shoot down a Hamas-controlled drone today. In addition, Israel's military has been able to use its missile defense shield provided by the U.S. to prevent rockets from hitting Israel. Unfortunately, that missile defense system can't stop all the rockets fired by Hamas. And what you're about to see here right now is a home in the southern part of Israel that was struck by a rocket. There you see it launched from Gaza earlier today. Militants say they've launched more than 1,000 rockets in the last 7 days. In response, Israeli Defense Forces say they've struck more than 1,300 targets. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister says he plans to continue the offensive attack against Hamas.
An unconscionable terrorist attack on civilian populations, and of course we have to act to defend ourselves.
And Benjamin Netanyahu urged Americans to imagine what it'd be like if U.S. cities from the East Coast to Colorado were under constant threat of rocket attacks. Neither side says it plans to cease fire. And the White House is feeling the pressure from both parties when it comes to immigration. Some Democrats and many Republicans continue to criticize the president's handling of the crisis at the border. Texas Governor Rick Perry went on the record yesterday and says the president simply doesn't care.
All right, folks, we have some breaking news out of Israel, and we'll bring it to you along with Fred Thompson, former Tennessee senator, who's now, of course, an actor. He'll be here to discuss the news of the day and his new film, Persecuted, which comes out on July 18th. Then we'll talk to Dr. Elena George, and we'll find out just how big a medical threat the kids coming across the border are. AJ Delgado, National Review contributor, will be here to discuss the crisis at the border and specifically her recent piece, Black Americans, the True Casualties of Amnesty. You got all that, give me 5 and more on this hour of the Steve Malzberg Show.
Ready? Fire away. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City. A fusion of politics, commentary, entertainment, and sports. Steve and his team bring you the latest news and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
All right, folks, so welcome to the show. CNN is reporting that Egypt is now offering to broker a ceasefire effective tomorrow between Hamas and Israel. Now, the last time Hamas and Israel went at it, and Hosni Mubarak was the president of Egypt, they were the facilitators of that agreement, that ceasefire, whatever you want to call it, back, I believe, in 2012, that ended the hostilities. So Egypt is wanting to enter into this again and to broker a cessation of hostilities between Israel and Hamas. And according to CNN, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel has ordered that his cabinet will meet tomorrow morning to look over the ceasefire that has been authored by Egypt to see if it is acceptable to the state of Israel and the Israeli cabinet. And we will take it from there. Meanwhile, the rockets keep falling from Gaza into to Israel. And, of course, Israel's retaliation has been tremendous. They have hit hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of targets inside the Gaza Strip. Joining us now is former Tennessee Senator Fred Thompson. Hello, sir. How are you, Senator?
Steve, I'm good. I'm good. Hope you are.
I am, and I appreciate you coming on. Great to talk to you. And let me ask you, before we get to your your exciting new film, Persecuted, which is coming out July 18th. Let me ask you about the situation. Boy, from afar, I'm sure you can't help but look at what's going on abroad, at home, in the Senate, Harry Reid, the Congress, the IRS. Your head must spin, and you must. Do you miss it? Do you say, I wish I were there so I could put my 2 cents in and try to get something accomplished? Or how do you view it?
No, I don't miss it from a personal standpoint. I went in with the idea of serving a number of years and then going back to the real world and put term limits on myself. So that's what I did. That's just me. I think we'd be a lot better off with a lot fewer professional politicians to start with. But as a private citizen, I'm extremely concerned about what's going on. I think we're going in the wrong direction as far as our long-term economic outlook is concerned. We're doing nothing about some of the crucial issues that are going to absolutely break us as a nation a little bit further down the road. We have less respect around the world than any time in our history since World War I. So yeah, I think that it's going to prove to be dangerous for us in the not too distant future. There's no free lunch anymore. We can't build a wall around our country, and I mean, obviously we can't build a wall around it because anybody can come in who wants to. But that's another story. So yeah, I'm concerned.
Yeah, that is another story. It's I was going to follow up on that. Obviously, I think without meaning it, you were referring to what's going on down at the border right now.
Yeah.
But if people talk about the Senate and the Congress and they're this dysfunctional, and the president says, well, I got to act because the Congress won't act. Of course, that's not the way the founders and the Constitution set it up. So is this Congress any more dysfunctional than Congresses have been in the past? And is it not incumbent upon a president also to reach out and to compromise, as this president has stated over and over again? He will not compromise on almost anything.
Well, let's kind of take them one by one. In the first place, our country was built upon the notion that we would not come together on everything. It was set up so that there would be conflict, that it would be done in a civil manner, and the important issues would be debated freely and openly, which they're not anymore. But gridlock, to a great extent, in and of itself, does not concern me in terms of just putting more laws on the books. We ought to be undoing some of the ones that we already have on. As a matter of fact, when you get right down to it, it's the undoing of prior mistakes that we need to come together on. Because when you say we need to come together, we need to work together, we need to compromise, well, perhaps we do, but tell me on what? I mean, what do we need to I mean, what is going to be the end result? Do we compromise and come out with an even greater debt? Do we compromise and kick the can down the road further on our entitlements? Do we compromise on cutting the military 10% or 20% when it doesn't need to be cut at all? So, that's what we're dealing with here. We have a bunch of people who are satisfied with the status quo and don't want to change anything, and they're getting their benefits from the government and things as most of us are nowadays. Middle class is the biggest beneficiaries and you have a good number of people on the other hand who are mildly concerned about the direction of our government and are exasperated when nothing seems to be being done in the right direction because politicians don't want to do anything that's going to anger their base or jeopardize their reelection.
Right. So sometimes.
So that produces conflict. The representatives are people in Congress are just representing the American people, I think, when we're divided.
Right. And one more, then we'll get right to the movie. So when you see the president go around saying, they're suing me, and I don't know, and I got to act because they won't act. I mean, this is kind of unprecedented, isn't it?
He has no concept, apparently, or he acts like he has no concept of the founding principles of our government. It's not a matter of somebody get electing president and he gets his way. I mean, it's the only president in history who I have ever seen or read about who thought that he could constitutionally bypass Congress as far as legislative activity is concerned. I mean, that's he acts as if he does not care what half the people in this country think. If they're not his voters, he wants to go down in history as having accomplished a couple of things and changing the face of America to his liking.
Right.
And doesn't really care about anything. If he knows better than that, it's highly unconstitutional, clearly unconstitutional. Several of the things that he has done. Imagine a Republican president, a big law being passed like the health care law and Obamacare, and him being in there and saying, well, we're not going to enforce this part this month, and next month we're not going to enforce the other part, and certain people are going to be exempt from the operation of this part. My goodness.
You think he'd be impeached, right?
No, yeah, without question.
Yeah. Is impeachment the answer here?
No, it's not, because the American people are not of a mind to do that.
Gotcha.
They're not going to do that. They don't. It's not bad enough yet for a lot of people to understand the trouble we're in.
All right, I don't want to let you go without having time to talk about the movie. So you were just on Broadway, right?
Yep.
All right, and that was very successful. Now talk about Persecuted, coming out July 18th.
Well, yeah, it's a new film. It's different. It's a more of a conservative film, if you will. Not a lot of these come out of Hollywood nowadays, but it's an independent film. It's based in Washington. It's a Washington thriller, and the bad guys are the president and the Senate Majority Leader. You can imagine that. And it's a question of freedom of religion. It raises questions of church and state, where they're trying to tell an evangelical, what he must do and what he cannot do. And this preacher stands up against him, and they frame him. And most of the movie is what he goes through in order to stand up for his First Amendment rights and freedom of religion. So it's an interesting, fun thriller on the one hand, but it carries a deeper message of how vigilant we have to be with regard to our First Amendment rights and in this case, freedom of religion.
Well, Senator, I can't wait to see it. It opens Friday. That's July 18th, if my math is correct in my head. And we all look forward to seeing you in there. And best of luck with the film. And thank you so much for talking to us, sir.
Thanks a lot.
My pleasure. That's Senator Fred Thompson, of course, and great actor, Fred Thompson. And he says there's not that many conservative films. There's more and more. There are more and more. He knows better than I, but there are more and they're more and more successful. And we've documented that over the course of time. We've talked about it with people like Robert Davi. We've talked about it with people like Danny Aiello. We've talked about it with others. And it's good to see. And I'm very anxious to see it, actually. I actually saw the Planet of the Apes movie on Sunday. I think I went on Sunday. Yeah, yesterday. It was okay. It bothers me to think that, this is like the #1 blockbuster of the summer, making all these millions, hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever, and it's okay. It wasn't the greatest movie of all time by any means. And you know what? My son looked at me and said, "Did you like it?" Because he wanted to go, and I took him. And I said, "Yeah, it was all right." But he said, "Why? What's the matter?" I said, "They could have done it in like 20 or 25 minutes less. It was a 2-hour-plus movie. They could have chopped 20, 25 minutes off of it easily. But it was action-packed to an extent. Was it the most brilliantly written or the most brilliantly acted movie? And I'm amazed how they do all this computer-generated stuff, but that's just me. I'm kind of, I don't know, easily impressed, I guess. When we come back, what epidemics may be brought into this country? Don't go away.
Falls are the #1 cause of injury to senior citizens. Falling down stairs can be disastrous. Acorn Stairlifts has a solution. Just don't fall. Sit, relax, ride with an Acorn Stairlift, the world's leader in stairlifts. That's right, Don't let limited mobility keep you from going up and down your stairs, even outside. Call Acorn Stair Lifts now for a free information kit and no obligation quote. Now you can safely ride with your Acorn Stair Lift.
Now I don't have to worry about him climbing those stairs again.
And our Acorn Stairlift was very affordable.
Our Acorn Stairlift is definitely more affordable than moving.
The Acorn Stairlift has a padded seat and backrest for maximum comfort. It easily folds up for access to the stairway. 5 safety sensors stop your Acorn Stairlift if there's something in the way. And it even runs during power outages.
And I'm the king of my own castle again.
You'll be working directly with the world's leader in stairlifts. That's right, there's no middleman. Acorn's trained technicians professionally install your stairlift directly to the staircase, in most cases in 2 hours or less, with no need for special construction. We don't leave until you're completely comfortable using your Acorn Stairlift.
Don't risk a serious fall down the stairs.
I was really surprised at how little they cost.
Call for your free no-obligation information kit and quote from Acorn Stairlifts. Just don't fall. Safely ride up and down your steps.
Give your life a lift with an Acorn Stairlift.
Call 1-800-514-1402 for your free information kit. That number again is 1-800-514-1402. Or visit our website today.
Call now.
Mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 58 years old.
This disease just ravages a family.
It changes your life. If we work together, we can stop this epidemic. Now is the moment.
Contact Bright Focus and learn more.
Politics, commentary, entertainment, sports, news, and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
Back here, the U.S. Border Patrol says it has stopped sending Central American children and families to San Diego after they're arrested in South Texas. The experiment sparked quite a backlash in one California city when protesters blocked a road and forced busloads of immigrants to reroute. Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, lawmakers are working out a possible compromise to deport migrant families more quickly.
And the U.S. Border Patrol says it will no longer transport migrant families who cross the border to a facility in San Diego. The first buses to attempt the trip were blocked by protesters and forced to reroute.
Otolaryngologist. 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 I said it correctly 3 times, I think. That's because our next guest, Dr. Elena George, is a board-certified otolaryngologist. And that's video you saw. They made a point on those 2 networks not to say illegal at all. But let's welcome in Dr. Elena George. Did I say it correctly, doctor?
You certainly did.
I will pat myself on the back, or on the shoulder anyway. Can't reach my back. All right, well, thanks for joining us. It's not a laughing matter. I appreciate you coming on. We have heard so much about the possible threat of disease and illness coming into this country from these children who have crossed the border, who are being housed together. First, let's talk of the threat to them before we get to the threat to us. When you bring all these kids from various countries together and you don't know what vaccinations they've had, I don't even know what those Central American countries do for vaccinations. You don't know what they have, what they're carrying, and you put them all together in these close quarters and keep them there together. What's the health threat to them?
It's absolutely a threat from anything that's airborne. The fact that people are in soiled clothes, they're being exposed to human waste, and they're all in heated conditions. I mean, it's like a perfect pressure cooker. It's like a culture medium, if you really want to think about it in that manner. And 1,700-mile trek by foot, by train, or however else they're coming up. They haven't been fed, they're dehydrated, their immune systems have basically taken a major hit. And you have to remember that they're young children, so they don't have a lot of reserve to begin with.
Yeah, no, that is awful. Now, we don't know, I don't believe, and maybe you could tell me, we don't know exactly what the outbreaks have been at these camps, if any, how many are sick, how many are in isolation, because even Congress people can't go see these children, and any reporters that go can't bring a camera, can't bring any recording device. It's just it's horrific to think that this is the United States of America. So, do you know more than I know? Are there any figures out about illnesses that these children are suffering again while they're not isolation, but in captivity, if you will?
I think we need to be clear that they're not in isolation. And I've seen some of the news reports where it's yellow, kind of crime scene tape, basically separating people who are ill from healthy people. So everybody's sharing the
Right.
same
I didn't mean to say.
space.
I didn't mean to say isolation.
No,
I didn't mean to say isolation. Yeah.
Just wanted to paint that picture so people understand that even if you're sick, you're still being exposed to people who are supposedly healthy. I don't have numbers, but I do have anecdotal information from nurses and frontline health professionals that say that they're seeing people with active TB who are coughing up blood, who are short of breath, who are physically in the throes of active TB, and they are communicable. And that's what you do know.
All right.
So you have scabies,
Now,
you have all sorts of things.
I'm sorry to interrupt. So now when these children are flown to various parts of the country, as we know, that's the plan. Not only have we seen them arrive on buses or attempt to arrive on buses, but now we know the president is asking governors of various states to accept these children. I would only imagine and hope that they wouldn't be sending those who they know are infected and are exhibiting the symptoms you've described. But nonetheless, what's the danger in sending the ones who are not exhibiting the symptoms but have been held in these kinds of places?
That's an excellent point. Not everybody shows symptoms right away, but they could have, the disease before it actually manifests or shows itself. So they're just as infectious. And they're putting them on commercial airliners. And, TSA has been ordered to stand down and allow these children and adults to get on planes without ID. So they're arriving in Georgia, they're arriving in Maryland, they're arriving all over the country. And there's now a story, I don't know if you've read this recently, but in Maryland, there was an illegal immigrant child who has TB, and the parents just got a letter from their school stating that their children have been exposed. I believe there's going to be a lot more letters like that going out, if parents are lucky.
Yeah, this is horrific. Talk about, if you can, list the possible illnesses that these children coming from these countries might have. I mean, I certainly could guess, but I know TB and include in there the antibiotic-resistant form of that as well.
That is the most frightening part about TB. In the past, they had treatments for it, but now it's become so difficult to treat that even as a healthcare worker, provider like myself, we have to take tests every year and actually do questionnaires to make sure that we're not able to pass any diseases. So you can imagine if the healthcare professionals are being put to this type of, glass, to make sure that we're doing it. You can imagine what happens when you don't check. So there's measles, there's mumps, there's chickenpox, which most of us have been vaccinated for, but infants haven't yet, and the senior citizens are all at risk, or people with HIV or other immune compromising diseases are at risk. Then you have scabies, you have tuberculosis, you have dengue fever, all sorts of tropical diseases that I, as a healthcare professional, don't have a lot of facility with because I don't know tropical medicine. So I can foresee a lot of pediatricians, ENTs, people on the front line are going to have to really brush up on tropical diseases so that we know what we're looking at. It's just the tip of the iceberg, I'm afraid.
And parents, if these kids come into their neighborhoods and schools, should be, I guess, very concerned, correct?
They should be. I mean, children are known vectors anyway. Runny noses, they play with each other, they touch each other, they touch their nose. The parents pick them up. I mean, just imagine how easily this could be transmitted through a family, for example. And my problem with this is that the government has no regard for us as American citizens. Look, my dad was an immigrant. I am not against legal immigration at all. But the way this is being done, it is being done haphazard, and it's all about winning at any cost. And it's political strategy without regard for health. And once these things get a foothold in our country, we're a problem.
Yeah, no, Doctor, thank you for educating us, and it's a horrific situation. Thank you very much. We'll speak to you again, Dr. Elena George.
Thank you.
We'll be back with more of the Steve Malzberg Show, ladies and gentlemen, right after this.
Smile.
No matter how well you provide for your family today, if you don't have life insurance, their future may be at risk. Think about what would happen if you were gone. Would they struggle to pay the bills and face an uncertain future? They don't have to. You can help guarantee those you love $200,000, $500,000, $750,000 or more with life insurance through AIG Direct. We'll help you get more for your money, up to 70% more. Just look, less than $14 a month buys a 40-year-old man a $250,000 term life policy. That's up to 3 times what you can get from other companies for the same price. No wonder millions of people rely on AIG companies. The call is free, the quote is free, and there's no obligation. Make the future more secure for those you love. Call now so you can sleep better at night.
For a free quote, call 1-800-558-5246 or visit AIGdirect.com.
When Bob got into the accident, I was terrified. His injuries were so severe, but once we knew he was going to be okay, what then?
I couldn't go back to work for a long time, and we got way behind on our bills.
We had hired an attorney, but when our case kept dragging on, we didn't know how we were going to get by. Thankfully, our attorney knew about Oasis Legal Finance.
Oasis looked at our case and got us the money the very next day.
What a relief it was. We didn't have to wait until our case settled, and the money from Oasis helped us when we needed it most.
At first, I wasn't so sure. What if we lost the case? How would we be able to pay back Oasis? But then I found out if we did lose, we wouldn't have to pay them back, so there was no risk in doing it. No risk.
If you were involved in an accident and hired an attorney to fight for the compensation you deserve but need money now before your case settles, then call Oasis today. Oasis has given millions of dollars to people like you who need money fast while waiting for their case to settle. There's no risk, so call now.
I was hurt badly in a car accident just after my wife gave birth. We were counting on the cash from my lawsuit to get caught up, but the case took forever.
Honestly, we didn't know what we were going to do. Then we saw an Oasis TV commercial and called. We were approved and got money from Oasis the next day.
Not in a week, the very next day.
I was hurt at work and filed a workers' comp claim. I called Oasis and they gave me the cash I needed. Unfortunately, I ended up losing my case, but Oasis let us keep the money. They kept their promise and we didn't need to pay them back.
There are no out-of-pocket costs and no payments until your case is settled. If you lose your case, you don't have to repay Oasis. There's no risk. Call Oasis now to see how much money you can get before your case settles.
Call now, 1-800-562-8184. 1-800-562-8184. 1-800-562-8184.
Texas Governor Rick Perry even went as far as to say the president simply doesn't care.
Time after time you see a response from this administration that says, you know what, we're really not that interested in the southern border of the United States.
And Perry also says he warned President Obama about the border crisis more than 2 years ago. The Texas governor claims he has been asking for National Guard troops at the border for more than 4 years now. Congress will soon hear testimony into another crisis at the Department of Veterans Affairs. We'll have much more on that story. You can follow it by going to Newsmax.com. Back to the studio.
Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
Josh, on the Middle East, is it not something of a contradictory statement to defend Israel's right to defend itself and at the same time call for restraint?
No, it's not a contradiction. I think it's a reflection of how complicated the situation is. But this is a situation that we've been dealing with for some time, and frankly that a couple generations of U.S. leaders have been dealing with. These are complicated times.
Yes, very hard. Welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. White House spokesman Josh Earnest, of course, cannot answer the question put forth by Mark Knoller. answer the question. How do you say Israel has a right to defend itself and then say you're going to negotiate a ceasefire for them and you call for restraint on the part of Israel? More.
And there is no doubt that the United States stands with Israel as they confront these threats. But at the same time, we also have a concern for the well-being of innocent civilians on both sides. That's why we believe it's in the interests of both sides to seek a ceasefire that would de-escalate the conflict and take so many innocent civilians out of harm's way.
No, it's in the interest of Hamas, and I'm not surprised that you would do something in the interest of Hamas. Give them a timeout, give them time to reload, rebuild, refinance, whatever, and then eventually they'll fire more rockets into Israel. So it's not about protecting Israel with a ceasefire, it's about protecting Hamas, in my opinion. Now, Iran is at it. Watch this.
It is extremely regrettable that people are being killed. Hundreds of innocent men, women, and children have been slaughtered. Almost 100 people have been killed, over 500 have been wounded in Gaza, and the United States is not taking any action. We know that all the weapons that are used by Israel in order to attack civilians in Gaza have been provided by the United States, and we don't see any move by the United States to condemn that.
And these are the people that Obama couldn't wait to shake hands with, call, meet with, broker a deal with, trust. Here's one more from this genius.
We call for an immediate end to all these activities.
You condemn Hamas?
We do not condemn people who are defending themselves. We believe that actions that are putting civilians in jeopardy in Gaza, that have placed restrictions on civilians to get access to medicine, to food, have tried to starve the civilians in Gaza, need to be vehemently condemned by the international community. The United States and the rest of the members of the Security Council have a moral and legal responsibility to put an end to this, and we regret the fact that they haven't taken any action in order to address this.
This is the foreign minister of Iran. Will not condemn Hamas. They are defending themselves. This is the kind of government that Barack Obama couldn't wait to shake hands with, call, sign a deal with, and say, we trust you. What's wrong with that picture? All right, folks, AJ Delgado will join us next. But first, this hour, you like that? But first, this hour's American Moment takes a look back at the first moon landing.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
In 1961, newly elected President John Fitzgerald Kennedy announced to the Congress and to all of mankind America's intention to send man to the moon. Previously restricted to the realm of science fiction, the president's commitment set in motion an unprecedented effort to fulfill one of man's oldest dreams. The obstacles were monumental, not the least of which was to create an energy source capable of sending a manned spacecraft to the moon. The answer stood 363 feet tall and delivered 8 million pounds of thrust, making the Saturn V the most powerful rocket ever built. On July 20th, 1969, Apollo 11, carrying astronauts Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Edwin Buzz Aldrin, circled the moon until Armstrong and Aldrin entered the lunar module and readied themselves for their historic landing. With just 20 seconds of fuel left, disaster was narrowly averted when Armstrong had to manually fly the Eagle away from unexpected boulders to a smoother and less dangerous landing zone. Although the imagery was poor, Neil Armstrong's words came through loud and clear.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
However, the flight was not without controversy. Buzz Aldrin, a devout Christian, administered himself communion on the moon. Since NASA was already fighting a lawsuit from atheist Madalyn Murray O'Hair, who objected to the earlier Apollo 8 crew reading from the book of Genesis, Aldrin's communion was kept a secret from the public. Not so secret was the plaque bolted to the descent ladder on the lunar module.
Eligible for Medicare, that's a good thing. But it doesn't cover everything. Only about 80% of your Part B medical expenses. The rest is up to you. So consider an AARP Medicare Supplement Insurance Plan, insured by United Healthcare Insurance Company. Like all standardized Medicare supplement insurance plans, they pick up some of what Medicare doesn't pay and could save you in out-of-pocket medical costs. Call today to request a free decision guide to help you better understand what Medicare is all about and which AARP Medicare supplement plan works best for you. With these types of plans, you'll be able to visit any doctor or hospital that accepts Medicare patients. Plus, there are no networks and virtually no referrals needed. There's a range of plans to choose from too, and they all travel with you, anywhere in the country. Join the millions who have already enrolled in the only Medicare supplement insurance plans endorsed by AARP, an organization serving the needs of people 50 and over for generations, and provided by United Healthcare Insurance Company, which has over 30 years of experience behind it. Call today. Remember, Medicare supplement insurance helps cover some of what Medicare doesn't pay. Expenses that could really add up. These kinds of plans could save you in out-of-pocket medical costs. You'll be able to choose any doctor who accepts Medicare patients, and there are virtually no referrals needed. So don't wait. With all the good years ahead, look for the experience and commitment to go the distance with you. Call now to request your free decision guide. This easy-to-understand guide will answer some of your questions and help you find the AARP Medicare supplement plan that's right for you.
Tonight we are a country awakened to danger and called to defend freedom.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
One day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
It's not right. Now billions of dollars want to be borrowed from the White House to help feed and house them. Where the kids here in our country? Not just in this neighborhood, but in our country. All these kids, really? Why can't they go back? I'm sorry that the parents are in poor living conditions or surroundings or whatever's going on out there. I don't care. I care about what's going on right here in my own backyard, my neighborhood. Am I the only one in this community that's out here that watches the news in the morning? Oh my God. I feel alone right now in this, and I'm very saddened by it.
All right, folks, there you go as we welcome you back to the Steve Malzberg Show. That woman from the Houston area. And joining us now is AJ Delgado, our friend, National Review contributor. Hello, AJ.
Hey, Steve, how are you?
I'm all right, but I got to tell you, you're hearing more and more of that sentiment, not only from more and more Americans, but specifically from members of the African-American community. And you document that in your great piece that you just wrote for National Review Online, Black Americans, the True Casualties of Amnesty.
They absolutely are. And what really touches me about that clip you just played is how that woman laments that she feels she's alone in this. The sad part is she largely is, at least if the Democrats are concerned. They have left the African-American community to fend for itself now. The inconvenient issue that no one wants to discuss as we push amnesty, as we push to keep and not deport pretty much any of these minors that have come through the border, is that the African-American community can't afford this, and we can't afford to do this to the African-American community. That community has an 11% unemployment rate, which is staggeringly high. And yet,
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And yet, at this time of extremely high unemployment, when the African-American community needs work permits, needs our help, we're instead going to grant amnesty, which is extremely costly, to these thousands of minors that have come through, not to mention the work permits that have been discussed. If we do a broader amnesty for illegals, 11 million perhaps across the nation, why is it that the Democrats, who traditionally build themselves as the party that helps African Americans, that's there for African Americans, why do they not have to answer for this? They're pushing them, they're throwing them under the bus, sweeping them under the rug in favor not only of Latino Americans, of foreigners, which is extremely, even more insult to injury.
Well, you know, you end your piece, I'll start backwards here, by saying, as you just alluded to, Democrats have built a brand as the party willing to stand up for black Americans, but the amnesty push shows what a false promise that was. The message to black voters is, quote, yes, your ancestors endured unimaginable hardships and helped build this country, and we said we'd help you out, but now we have a new trophy wife, end quote. And again, you know, I hate to get totally cynical, but it's the first black president leading the charge on this. Just as, you know, to get a little bit off the path here, the first black president, one of the first things he did was ended the voucher system in Washington, D.C., so some of the poorest black kids in one of the worst school systems in the country could no longer have hope. Of course, the media won't talk about this as you are and as I am, but it is kind of ironic, is it not?
Right, talk about irony that the first black president is the one that's most harming African Americans, as you say, by ruining charter programs, and now with this, which greatly impedes their ability to find unemployment in what traditionally the lower skilled arenas, which are disproportionately African American workers. Those are the arenas which immigrants take the jobs. We've seen, for instance, from 1980 to the year 2000 was a time of extremely high immigration. And what happened to the jobs in that sector? They were almost all taken by immigrants. You've seen an across-the-board reduction during that period in wages for lower-skilled Americans, primarily for African Americans. How is this helping African Americans? How are Democrats helping this voting bloc that voted, I believe last I looked, about 90% for Barack Obama? How is this helping them? How is this rewarding the African Americans' loyalty to the Democratic Party? It's not. They're being pushed aside in favor of what they see as the next wave of voting for them, which is the Latinos. Now it's a trophy wife substitute.
Yeah, now you pointed out, and I'm glad you did, that not only is the economic future of the African American community placed in jeopardy, or at least significantly burdened through this immigration push here and the illegal immigration, but so is, as you put it, their history of suffering is being diluted. Now, I blame African American quote-unquote leaders like Jesse Jackson and others that referred, for instance, to George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin, specifically Trayvon Martin, as Emmett Till, which is just, to me, as outrageous as you could possibly be. Having said that, though, you got Sally Cohn. She wrote a piece last week saying that if you use the term illegal immigrant, that it's just as bad as saying the N-word. You point that out in your piece. Now, that is absurd and obscene as well.
Yeah, it's not bad enough that they're getting the raw deal here with work permits and increased costs in their neighborhoods as we see immigrants move in. But how about the fact that the gravity of the word, the N-word, is being diluted, and we're told, no, illegal immigrant is pretty much just as bad as the N-word. No, not in a million years. It's not in the same universe, and it's a disgusting insult to African Americans. And I'm surprised Sally Cohn made this point, because she's usually quite fair and reasonable. So it worries me that somebody as reasonable as she is would even make this argument. You can't compare the two. The N-word is something that African Americans heard when they were being lynched, when they were being murdered, when they were being told to use a different water fountain. Illegal immigrants, free education, free health care, free housing, free legal aid even for these minors that have come over. The sky's the limit in benefits. How can you even say they're in the same category? It's disgusting.
It is, and I would debate you on Sally Cohn whether or not she's usually fair. but that aside, and again, it's the terminology, illegal, immigrant, and when people say
they're here illegally.
No,
How is that an insult?
Not only that, it's the AJ. It's when the president and the left and the media, which is the same thing, says we're a country of immigrants. We all came here as immigrants. First of all, I'm not an immigrant. I don't know that we're a country of immigrants. Our ancestors might have been immigrants, but mine came legally, and I'm sure if you had immigrant parents, yours came legally, possibly too. I don't know, but
it's a ridiculous argument because then every country at some point is made up of immigrants. We can go back 2,000 years ago, so that's a ridiculous argument. And even if we are a country of immigrants, which to a large degree we are recently, I suppose, we're a country of legal immigration. My parents came here legally. I'm sure your ancestors came here legally. There is a lawful, proper procedure to follow that Americans have followed and our ancestors followed. And those of us who do not should not be lumped in the same category as those who do, those who followed the law and played by the rules and played fair.
Absolutely. All right, so where are we going with this? Now we have the president reaching out to the governors. I mean, basically saying these kids aren't going home. Once you start asking the governors of the states in this country to take in these kids, they're never going back.
And the scary part, and I believe Michelle Malkin has reported on this somewhat, the scary part is they're being shipped across the nation into almost cells so that they will be untrackable. If they were to have kept them all in one location, then maybe 6 months from now when we finally get our head together and decide, yeah, we probably should send them back, because at the very least this sends a terrible message to Latin America to send us your kids and we'll keep them and we'll feed them and we'll clothe them. When we do decide to do that, too late, they're already scattered all over the country. It's going to be pretty hard to send them back at that point. And that's exactly why they're shipping them off into different pockets.
And when
it's all very methodical.
And when, God forbid, we have the first outbreak of drug-resistant tuberculosis, who's going to be responsible for that?
Certainly not Barack Obama, because the buck never stops with him. So I'm sure they'll find a way to pin it on the Republicans somehow.
Well, that's another issue, and I still keep hearing the Republicans blamed for not embracing comprehensive immigration reform. I say no way they give this president the $3.75 billion. No way on earth. You agree?
Well, it's political suicide for any Republican that votes to give that amount of money. But stranger things have happened, and there is so much pressure from certain angles to do the compassionate thing, even from within our own side, that it wouldn't surprise me if maybe a lesser degree, maybe $1 billion is allocated, which is still $1 billion too much. Send them back. We can't afford it.
Yeah, for $1,000 a kid. According
Let's take it.
$1,000 a kid, you could, according to the senator that we spoke to, you could dress them, feed them, bring them to a hotel, give them a shower, give them new clothes, feed them, and put them on a plane, fly them back for $1,000 a kid, and that would be the end of the problem. But we could hold our breaths, both of us, for that. It's not going to happen. AJ, keep up the good work. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you. Always an honor.
My pleasure. AJ Delgado, ladies and gentlemen, National Review contributor. It is mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling, and I got to tell you, I challenge you. Please help me. If you could inform me, have you seen this angle of this covered in the mainstream media? Black Americans getting screwed, basically. Have you seen this coverage of this? Just like you don't see the coverage of African Americans. A majority in California. Remember how they voted for Prop 8? Not disproportionately, but biggest percentage of voting for traditional marriage in California were African Americans more than any other ethnicity. The media doesn't want you to know that this will adversely affect the African American community. If you could find it in the mainstream media, let me know. Up next, give me 5.
Looking for a home loan? Welcome to PennyMac, one of America's leading mortgage lenders, where all we do are home loans. PennyMac offers a neighborhood of home loan options. First-time buyers? Call PennyMac for some low down payment options as low as 3.5%. Looking for an FHA loan, jumbo loan, VA loan, or conventional loan? Call PennyMac. Want to refinance to save money? Yup, call PennyMac. Home underwater? PennyMac offers a government-sponsored HARP program that can help you reduce your interest rate. So if you're thinking home loans, PennyMac leads the pack with low rates week in and week out, so you know you're going to save money and get a fast closing. So call PennyMac now. We're probably helping some of your neighbors with their loans, and we're ready to help you too. Call the experts in home loans in the next 10 minutes to get a free $50 Home Depot gift card. Call 800-424-1956. 800-424-1956. 800-424-1956.
Can you really lose weight without changing your lifestyle? LaToya Q did. In fact, in just 5 months, she lost nearly 2 pounds a week without changing the way she dieted or exercised.
I lost 36 pounds and I went down 4 dress sizes.
Like so many people, LaToya didn't want to change her lifestyle to lose weight. Instead, she decided to take America's #1 selling diet pill, Lipozene.
People kept asking me, "Are you you have to be exercising? You're really you just don't want to tell us what you're doing." I was like, "No, I don't have time to go to a gym. I just took Lipozene and I started seeing results immediately."
Lipozene has now sold over 20 million bottles. That's because Lipozene really works. And to prove it, we conducted our very own double-blind clinical study where all we asked people to do was take Lipozene. And by just taking Lipozene, they lost weight. But here's where it gets really exciting. These people were not asked to change their diet or exercise. And 78% of the weight they lost was pure body fat. Not water, fat.
I'm almost back down to my high school weight, so I'm really loving that.
And for even faster results, you can try Lipozene with moderate diet and exercise.
Feels great to have a six-pack. I didn't think I would have it at my age.
I lost 7 inches off of my waist and I lost 2 dress sizes and I feel amazing.
Now you can join the millions of people who have lost weight with Lipozene by trying it risk-free for only $29.95. Lipozene is guaranteed to help you lose weight or your money back.
Lipozene, it works.
But wait. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll double your order absolutely free. Plus, we'll even pay for your shipping. But that's still not all. To celebrate selling over 20 million bottles of Lipozene, the company will give you a free bottle of Metabo Up with your order. That's a $20 value free. But you must call right now because this exclusive free offer is not available in stores.
Call 1-800-509-9436. That's 1-800-509-9436.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him opening his own clothing store at the age of 18? 1 in 138,000. Excited to be a part of pop culture, he packed for the big city. The odds of finding someone to invest in his vision? 1 in 4.5 million. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 68. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference.
Rachel Gentile was on the phone with Trayvon Martin when his fatal encounter with George Zimmerman began.
You listening?
A year ago, we watched as she made no secret of her feelings during a combative cross-examination by the defense in Zimmerman's murder trial. Today, I find her working hard to put the past behind her and to deal with lingering regret.
All right, folks, welcome to Gimme 5. Really? We have to relive all this? Well, if I had to relive it watching it, I figured I should make you relive it by watching it and listening to it. I mean, can't they leave bad enough alone? Do her people really think that this is going to put her in a positive light, in a different light, in a new light? She should just really go away from public view and live her life and not keep putting herself out there, because I got to tell you, it really doesn't seem to get much better. Watch.
Were you blaming yourself when George Zimmerman went free?
A little bit.
Did you think you should have said something different? Or acted differently?
Yeah, act different.
You think the jurors didn't take you seriously?
Yes. They judge how they talk, how they look, how they dress.
And they were judging you?
Yes.
Okay, and I know this woman was the first person ever judged by a jury. First person. Never happened before. Never in the history of witnesses and juries. She is the first victim of such nonsense. More.
What sort of issues did she have to deal with?
Post-traumatic stress. She was suffering from post-traumatic stress.
Ron Vereen is a Miami attorney who organized a support group he calls The Village, providing Rachel with counseling to deal with the grief of losing her longtime friend and intense tutoring to overcome problems in school. No one knew it at the time, but when 19-year-old Rachel took the stand, she was barely able to read and write beyond the level of a third grader.
You're not getting any comment from me. No one knew it at the time? I'll tell you what I did know at the time. She was rude. And if I were the judge in that courtroom, she would have been held in contempt of court. That I could tell you. That I know. What level she could read and write at? Nothing you would have told me would have surprised me. Next.
She often pushed back when tutoring took 4 to 6 hours a day.
During the trial, I saw what happens when somebody gets on your bad side. And I don't know if I would ever want to be on your bad side.
No, you don't want to cross the road.
But her tutors didn't give up, and neither did Rachel. These photos taken in May mark the moment their work paid off. Rachel donned a cap and gown and collected her high school diploma.
She credits what has taken place since what happened in the courtroom to Trayvon Martin, all the good things. The fact that she's graduated, she says, well, I kept my word to Trayvon that I would do this.
She's also keeping a promise to herself by having the last word for people who criticize the way she talked and acted on the witness stand.
Oh, yes, you're going to get that last word right now. Isn't this exciting? I mean, again, I just can't see the positive out of all this. Good for her. I'm glad she graduated. I hope she gets a great job and has a wonderful life. But do it away from the spotlight. And now she's going to trash George Zimmerman. Of course, it's obligatory, is it not? Watch.
They're implying that you're not very smart.
Yeah. You can't say that. You can't judge a book by a cover.
She's had to do a lot of growing up and learning how to take responsibility for her actions. Rachel Gentile says she believes George Zimmerman should do the same.
What would you say to George Zimmerman right now?
You know he did wrong, and he got a man upset. To me, you're not a man. George Zimmerman's not a man. That's still a little boy with a grown body.
All right, I guess that means something. He's a little boy in a grown body. I don't get that. But okay, hey, that's what she says. That's what she says. After all, she's Rachel Gentile. She must be right. And if you criticize her, something must be wrong with you. And finally, watch.
Let's set the record straight. I'll ask you straight out.
Straight out.
Do you want to be an attorney?
No.
Oh, you know, it breaks my heart because I could see myself, 15, 20 years down the road, if I needed an attorney, possibly calling up Rachel Gentile on the Steve Malzberg Show.